Welcome, everyone, to the Islanders Never Say Die podcast. I'm your host, TJ, and with me here again, as always, is our NHL analyst and expert, the grumpy old man. They say there's no shame in his game because he is always the same.
That's me.
And with us, special guest, Grumpy. I've only messed up his name about 15,000 times before the show, but Stefen Rosner here of NYI Hockey Now, stands for New York Islanders Hockey Now, also has a podcast, the Back Check podcast, where you got the link in the description below where you could find his information. But Stefen, how are you this evening? Fine Wednesday.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I have a question, TJ, for you.
Oh, God.
I have never met Stefen. I've never talked to him. When you looked at his name, how the hell did you get Steven out of that?
I thought it was an interesting
There's no freaking V. There is no V in that name.
Grumpy, I don't know, Grump, but it's the same
Matter
reason
of fact,
why
it's not even a PH, which, okay. It's a freaking F.
I know. It's the same reason why I can't read sentences coherently on this show, Grumpy. You should know this better than anybody, Grumpy. You spend hours with me every single week. You should know this.
I spent thousands and thousands of dollars on your education, and you can't even get a simple name.
There it is. Stefen. Yeah, there it is. Steve. Okay, Grumpy. What can I say? Mistakes have been made, but Stefen Rosner of NYI Hockey Now, that's where you can find his articles that he writes about. We like Grumpy and I have talked about articles before in the past.
Appreciate it.
We like some articles are very critical of other places. We like what Stefen writes a lot of times. Again, it's crazy what critical thinking and being dubious can do for your readers. Absolutely. It's fantastic always, Stefen. Now, let me ask you. So I want to get some shameless plugs for what you do and kind of a little bit about, how we can find you. Obviously, we can find everything you write at NYI Hockey Now and the Back Check podcast as well.
Yeah, so NYI Hockey Now, the site started about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I took over halfway through last season. Obviously, it was COVID, the pandemic, everything was on Zoom. They opened it up towards the end of the year, and then this year we're in the locker rooms talking to players, which is great because for me, graduating college, it was the pandemic. And I've never been in an NHL locker room, in any locker room really, so now having the opportunity to now go into locker rooms, talk to players, you get to know a different creative side because last year everyone's getting the same quotes, everyone's asking the similar questions, and you're writing based on that. So now, I talked to Varlamov the other day about his new helmet, Sorokin about his new helmet. I spoke to a bunch of Islanders today to just say, hey, Barzal signed an extension. What does that mean to you personally? And then you get all those things. So it's been a really cool experience so far, and I'm excited to get off and get going for a year or two here.
There it is, Grumpy. Looky there. And tell me a little bit about the podcast you have. The Back Check podcast as well. It's a way to listen to your thought. Again, I feel like maybe I can articulate better what I'm saying in words. I mean, people think my reading's bad. What if they would have seen my writing? So I think, through an audio format, it's easier usually to articulate your thoughts. Now, tell me a little bit about the Back Check podcast.
Yeah, so interesting story. Me and my college roommate, both hockey fans. He covered the Rangers, I covered the Islanders. So we said, you know what, a rivalry podcast. We talk Rangers, Islanders, and we started that sophomore year of college. We had different names as we kept trying to find the right name. We had networks, and then we found the back chat. We got a logo made. It's been great. He actually moved from New York to Tampa in August, so a couple months before this hurricane hit. He had to be evacuated, but yeah, no, it's great. So he's a big Ranger fan, but he also writes for it. And, take the fan out of it. We kind of, we give takes that we have, but we're also, analytically driven. We both write, so we have that going for us. But it's a lot of fun, and especially like you guys, father son talking hockey. It's just me and my best friend talking hockey, conversational. Get some interviews on there, but it's just an hour and a half of just talking hockey and having a good time.
Grumpy, did you hear that? Analytical, Grumpy. Too many numbers, Grumpy. No, Grumpy's not.
Yeah.
Numbers. Grumpy doesn't like those at all.
I don't need that.
That's fine. It's not for everyone. It's more conversational, but we do bring in some numbers. So yeah, if you check out our website, you can find us everywhere on there. We have a Twitter account at backcheck or _backcheck pod. I forgot which one. If you look it up, you'll find it. But yeah, just fun time talking hockey.
You could find them pretty much on every medium, whether it's Spotify, Apple. You could pretty much find them. I linked their link tree below, so however you like to listen, you're able to do that, as well as for NYI Hockey Now as well. So you're able to see the articles that Stefen puts out there. And Grump, we got a shameless plug of our own. TJ and the Grumpy Old Man Show, general sports podcast, happens every Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and every Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know we run late. I know Grumpy usually is the reason why, but he's made a promise to be more accurate and on time. So you can
Well, today was your fault, TJ.
There you go.
Trying to figure out how to pronounce my name for 25 minutes, and just it's right there, EFEN. So I mean.
There it is. I was about to say, Stefen, it's the running gag. I'm always the one who's late, so I'm trying to blame it.
That's not a gag. That's reality.
You should have heard what the grumpy old man was saying.
Oh, you bad mouth me beforehand, Grump.
It's a gag because it's so ridiculous. Great comedy is always based in truth.
Exactly.
So
it's all
true.
And here's the thing: you would think that he would try to do something to improve that, but no.
I always run late. I guess it's been dubbed running on TJ time, running late.
So you look good when you're on time.
Was that? I'm sorry.
You look good when you're on time. That's why you do it. That one time you're on time, you look like amazing.
No, I wouldn't even say that.
So. Okay. Yeah. No. Exactly.
I don't know how many times we get there on time. I want to say more often than not, it shows like fashionably late. It's like when you have a dinner party at 8 or 8:30.
Not at a dinner party. This is not a dinner party.
Welcome to the Dinner Party of Islander podcast, Grumpy.
It's supposed to be a podcast starting at 8 o'clock.
I know.
But go ahead, push our other podcast. Show it whatever you did, the thing you do that shows it up there.
Oh, yes. It's called TJ and the Grumpy Old Man. Can be found in the link in description below or as a featured page on our YouTube channel. We talk everything sports, NBA, NFL, MLB, college football, a little bit of European football. We talk anything and everything in NHL, right? Anything and everything sports on the show. And fan fights are always a great segment. Hey, drunken fans in the football stands are back around slugging it out and beating the hell out of each other. And who doesn't like a nice fan fight every once in a while? So you could check that out on Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and on Sundays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, called TJ and the Grumpy Old Man, found in the link in the description below, as well as a feature page on our YouTube channel.
Now, TJ, can you put that back up for a second, TJ?
Are you going to do the same thing
Can you put that up for a second?
Yeah, I got it. Here it is.
TJ, did you create that logo?
I wish I could even claim I did, but I have so microscopic amount of artistic ability. I did not. I wish I can even claim I did that in word art, but I couldn't.
What were the instructions you gave to the artist? Make sure that your name is way bigger than the true star of the show. Is that what you did? I
said, I need you to shackle the Grumpy Old Man. If he gets too much, his head will not fit through the door.
That's
but all joking aside, obviously, big news yesterday. Mat Barzal inks a long-term deal with the New York Islanders. He's got himself an 8-year contract, $9.15 million AAV. A fantastic deal signed. Not only for, I think, fantastic deal for the Islanders. I would consider that a hometown discount.
Yeah, well, first off, We saw it coming. We knew it was probably going to happen before the start of the season. We spoke to Lou on the golf course a couple of weeks ago. He wasn't going to divulge any information because that's Lou. He's not going to tell you anything. And even talking to Barzal, it sounded like he wanted to get this done before the season started. And we spoke to Barzal at the end of last year, the last day of media availability, and he said, I want to be an Islander for the rest of my career. I want to be here long term. He kept saying that throughout the summer on podcasts. The first day of training camp said it again. So, actions speak louder than words, and he put pen to paper, and they agreed on a deal that works for them. I think people that think that the deal is overrated, I think it's very hard to judge contracts when they happen because, again, you have 8 years to prove it was a good deal or not. You can't judge it now. But also, they cost an extra $1 million for the Islanders to keep him here long term, a guy that wants to be here. So be it. So, yes, you're banking on Barzal to score more than 15 goals. He's a guy that could be a point-per-game player in a new system. We'll see under Lambert how much more offense is brought there. But, there's no face of the franchise to Lou Lamoriello. He said the only face of the franchise is the logo. But Mat Barzal is the face of the franchise. And if the Islanders are going to do anything productive in the regular season and the playoffs, it's going to be because Barzal does something.
I was about to say, all the ladies love Mat Barzal, them, the Matt Martins, everybody. But now you mentioned
Lane Lambert too. Lane Lambert as well.
Well, those are like the middle-aged ladies, grumpy old man. When we went to that Hurricanes game so many
I'll
moons
tell you
ago.
what, we knew who their favorites were. They did not hide their love for certain players / coaches.
Hey, grumpy fan favorites for a reason. Maybe because of the accolades they've earned here with us. Maybe because of the looks. Hey, you get the title one way or the other.
I'm going to say if you have crossover appeal with the male and female population, that's the type of stuff that gets you paid or keeps you on a team well past the time you should be there.
I thought you were going to say something else that rhymed with "get you paid," but that's fine. But
I'm flip the animal like you.
What can I say, Grumpy? I guess my mind's in the gutter. Yeah. But Mat Barzal, huge signing. Now, I consider that a hometown discount. And I know everybody throughout the time, we always were curious. And again, we have no idea about Mat Barzal. I always think, and again, I've said this, I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but Stefen, again, if you never feel uncomfortable or don't want to answer certain questions, please do not. We always felt Mat Barzal did not like Barry Trotz. We heard that there was a little bit of a yelling argument that occurred or something like that from somebody who was close to the organization. They were not on good terms. We always saw that 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even 4 years ago, all the time during press conference interviews and post-game interviews, Barry Trotz would rip certain players and would always leave other things that were relatively vague regarding, hey, we need performance better in XYZ, instead of calling out the lack of performance by that player. But Mat Barzal was always one of those whipping boys. I felt like it didn't ever gel well with Matt, and I felt like he was a guy who wore his emotions on the sleeve. Didn't have a good relationship with Barry Trotz. Did you felt like he had a good relationship with Barry? I mean, like, I don't even know if that's something you were privy to, but.
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't something I was privy to. All I've heard is great things about Trotz. All the players have said that they loved him as a coach. They were shocked by the news. When I think, we'll never know what happened. You could speculate. Obviously, Trotz wasn't himself last year. A lot of things happened. Besides the Islander season, he lost his mom, which was devastating for him. So, it's hard to, judge a man. But you look at the season, he didn't coach the best he could, I don't think. He even said it that he had long leashes for veterans at times. I think he was mentally drained. And I don't know. I don't think that rumor about players not liking him. Now, again, we're not in their head. I don't know. People complain that the system, players didn't like playing in the system. Well, the system worked for a couple of years. And of course, in a full regular season, you saw the true colors of the system. It's very hard to play in an 82-game season, especially when you have all the obstacles the Islanders faced last year, plus injuries to major players that made that system work. Like Ryan Pulak helped that system because he was a transitionary, strong defenseman. He's out long term. You had slower defensemen in Chara and Green past their prime. No matter how much Chara did for Dobson, it was a struggle to start the season. Pelech and Pulak were separated before Pulak got hurt. So, a lot of things went wrong. Coaching decisions, players didn't play well. Everything went wrong. And I think, you look at Trotz, he was coming into his final year of a deal. No GM wants a lame duck head coach. Were there conversations about maybe, giving him an extension? Was Trotz saying, listen, I don't feel like I could coach again? All these things happen. Lane Lambert, would he have joined a different team and been a head coach somewhere else and the Islanders would have lost that on him? Who knows? But all we've heard is, how much the players love Trotz. And so I can't really answer that as to the fights. What I will say is that Lane has said that he wants to have, there wants to be more offense, a little more aggressive in the system they're going to have in place. And I think that'll bode well for all the forwards, especially Barzal. And again, It looks like the lines are going to be Parise, Barzal, and Palmieri. You look at that line, people complain, okay, Parise is too old. And as much as you look at age, and that is a factor for some players, a la Chara and other guys in the league, Parise has never shown that age is a factor. Now, Parise can't be a 40-goal scorer with Barzal. It's just not going to happen. Palmieri can't have 3 goals in the first 30 games. You need guys that you're paying to step up, and it can't be just one line either. The Lee, Nelson, Bo line. Bo has to have a bounce back year. Lee and Nelson had great years. Nelson was out for a little bit too and still had a ridiculous season. So I think, that for that line, the Parise, Barzal, Palmieri line, I think the biggest player on that line's got to be Palmieri. He's going to be the one that has to bury the goals. He was snake bitten last year. I mean, he hit the post, it seemed like, every game. So, I think the offense will improve a bit, but this team's bread and butter is still their defense and the defensive system. And with the subtractions of Chara and Green and adding Romanov has struggled with Dobson so far, but we can get to that in a little bit. This defense is much better and has the potential to be a top 5 defense, but it's not going to happen overnight. The new system in place, Romanov being an aggressive defenseman, Dobson's not used to that. He had Chara, who sat back and watched and let Dobson do what he had to do. So there's going to be a lot of learning curves, a lot of question marks entering the season. But again, the offense is not going to score 5 goals a game. This team's going to win the close games because of their defense and goaltending.
It's interesting you mentioned Romanov because I watched last night's game. Both he and Bailey took ill-advised pinches on, I'm not sure which goal it was, where Dobson was the only guy back.
Yeah, so that was the typical, the 2-on-1 typical with Hayes. That was Romanov. Romanov pinched a couple times, and I think that's something that Dobson's going to have to get used to because Chara didn't pinch. Dobson's job was to take the puck up, and Chara stayed back. So I think, as we saw Chara and Dobson take a little bit before they finally got comfortable with each other, Dobson's playing with a whole different animal. Yes, Romanov and Chara are both physical, but they play different games. And Dobson's still a young guy. So is Romanov. They're both 22. And I think that as much as the Islanders want to be aggressive, Romanov, one, has to understand that he can pinch every time. And 2, Dobson's going to have to learn, hey, if Romanov's going in on a play, he's got to stay back. As much as Dobson wants to be carrying the puck and be in the offensive zone, there's got to be accountability there. And as they play more games, they've played a handful of preseason games already. They'll probably both play the last 2 to get, more chemistry going. But yeah, Romanov's going to have to be weary that, he can't just step on every play because Dobson doesn't understand yet that he's got to be back more.
See, and that's for me. Romanov needs to be the guy. Noah Dobson has shown he's the guy who can generate offense from the back end. I think they're going to have to put Romanov in his place. Say, hey, listen here, brother. You're going to have to stay back. It would be like having Bobby, and I'm going to just throw Bobby Orr's name in there just as a comparison thing. Bobby Orr, and I don't even remember who his defense partner was, but believe me, it was a stay-at-home guy. You didn't have Bobby Orr playing back and the other guy pinching up. I mean, Romanov has not shown in his brief career that he's a guy who's going to rush the puck up, where Noah Dobson has already established that he's that type of guy. So hopefully they kind of step on him a little bit and say, hey, get in line, Chief. Because I agree with you. I don't think he's looked good the first couple of preseason games I've seen of him.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's all going to come back to communication as well. I mean, you see the mistakes yesterday, though hopefully those are learning experience for both of them. But Romanov's coming from a Montreal Canadiens team that didn't really have a system until St. Louis took over and Romanov got a bigger role. So this is new for Romanov, where he's, there's a structured system and he doesn't have to be relied upon for offense and defense. He played a lot of defense in Montreal. That was his job. Focus on your defense. And I think now he looks at it as a fresh opportunity to show that he's more than just a one-dimensional defender. But again, he has to realize he's with the guy in Dobson who is the best offensive defenseman the Islanders have, transitioner. It's okay for Romanov to sit back and just focus on the defensive side of the puck, and he'll get his chances on offense. It'll happen. He's got a strong shot. It's not the hardest shot in the world, but it's accurate. He's a big hitter. He just has to learn that, you don't have to step every time because you have a system in place that he doesn't have to be the guy that lays the hit, breaks the play every time. You got a strong defense corps, and Thompson, who's getting better in his own zone, still has to work on it. He's got support there. And I think in Montreal, especially, after their cup run, this is a weak Montreal team where there's a lot of things going wrong, and Romanov probably thought he had to do more than he did, and now he has a chance. Remember, he's not a number 1 pairing defenseman. He's a number 2 with a young guy as well. So I think the more they play together, they'll be okay. I thought, as much as Pelech and Pulak are a dynamic duo, I thought it would have made a lot of sense, and it could still happen, is if Pelech was with Dobson. I think if you look at I'll explain why. I'll explain why in a
No,
second.
I've been talking
Okay.
about that for the last year.
For about a year, a
Yeah,
solid
so
year. That's
I
right.
wrote an article over the summer when they first got Romanov, and I watched him play, and I said, listen, Dobson's your best offensive weapon. You should put him with your best defensive weapon. And if you do the lines Pelech Dobson, Romanov, Pulak, and Salo Mayfield, each line has a transitioner, and each line has a defensive defenseman. And the fact that you separate a pair of 22-year-olds, not saying that can't be a pair for the next 10 plus years or whatever, but you have a stable veteran guy that knows how to play in the defensive side of the puck. When Pulak came up, he was the offensive player and Pelech was the defender. But Pulak his offense really hasn't been there over the last couple of years. He doesn't hit the net as much. I talked to him about it the other day. He said that's what he really needs to improve upon. He knows he could bring more offense. But again, a guy like Romanov who wants to step up, I trust there should be trust there that Pulak will stay back and understand because Pulak's a veteran at this point. So I think you stabilize your defensive core like that. Each line is a transitioner, a puck mover, an offensive guy. Each line has a defensive guy. And that's, you balance it out. Again, Pulak and Pelech together, though, could be a top pairing defenseman. I just think you don't want to see happen where Romanov and Dobson start together this year. Things go south because, again, the Islanders can't afford really for a slow start. No team in the Metro can. This is such a tough division where you need 100 points to make the playoffs, even if you're a wild card team. So again, the Islanders want to keep those two together, Romanov and Dobson. But I think if it doesn't work out early, I think it might make sense to make the switch just to, let them practice or whatever they have to do. But again, there's a very limited trial period for the Islanders. 50th anniversary, coming off a really tough year. And Lou said it's not a prove it year. These guys believe in each other. But again, the times they went to the semifinals, those were shortened season. This team in this system, where it's going to be probably similar to Trotz's, have not proven they could do it in an 82-game season. So this year is a huge year for the organization because if it goes south and they don't make the playoffs, you might see this thing being blown up. So I think that there's little room for error. And it's going to be a learning curve for the system for everyone with a new coach. But I think if they wanted to stabilize their defense, separating Pelech and Pulak, at least to start, or when things go south, maybe in games, if things aren't working out, I don't think it's a bad idea to make the switch just to get more stability back there.
Well, Stefen, let me just say one thing. If you start talking our talking points, they are going to strip you of your press pass. I'm just telling you, because everything that you just said, we have talked about on this show for quite a while now. Personally, I think that Pulak and Pelech, 2019 was their best year. Was it 19 or 20? One of those 2 years. That was their best year. I think they've taken a step back. I think Adam Pelech has lost a little bit in skating, getting back. That's where I think maybe pairing him with Dobson would be an advantage. And you're right. Ryan Pulak can say, yeah, I need to work on this and work on that. But at 28 years old, he kind of is what he is at this point. So, but
you saw him get taken off the power play because, again, he wasn't hitting the net the highest right now. I think he still has the shot. He still could get pucks on that. He's got to focus on that. And I think, again, like you said, Pelech maybe lost a step. I think for Pelech, his skating is not as important just because of his reach. He doesn't have to skate back really hard to get to a puck or knock somebody to the corner. He's got the long stick to do that. And we saw a higher offense with Pelech last year. And I think maybe that's what you're looking at because the offense went up, but the defense at times, there were some questionable plays. No doubt some games where Pelech didn't look like Pelech, and maybe that was him overcompensating for no Pulak on his line while Pulak was out. And again, he had a rotation of defensemen that maybe he didn't have all that chemistry with, and he thought he had to do more, like we just said with Romanov. But yeah, again, I think Pulak could definitely bring more offense than he has for sure. Can he be, 20 goal scorer as a defenseman? No, but I think he could bring more than 5 or 6 goals a season. He's proven that he can. And it'll just come with opportunities. If the offensive system works perfection, the Islanders are going to need their defense to score. Like, just because the system is more offensively doesn't mean it's the forwards that have to score. You're going to see a lot of cycling, a lot of shots on goal with bodies in front. And if the Islanders defense doesn't provide offense, this team's not going anywhere either. So it's a group effort for sure, but every team needs support from the back end on offense and on defense, and vice versa. Forwards need to get back in a defensive system. It's not just solely on the defenseman on the ice.
Ooh, Grumpy, you hear that right there? The defensemen are going to have to create.
This is not anything that we haven't spoken.
I know. I know. Grumpy.
I don't know if you noticed my shirt, Steven. It's called the Enemy of the Cartel. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Now, I consider you one of the cartel members, just to be honest with you.
Okay.
That's the media cartel. They don't want to they preach the company line. And, so I'm going to ask you some
doesn't do that. I'm like, keep saying Stefan.
I definitely don't sell drugs. I'll tell you that. So
I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'm going to look at. I'm going to read your eyes, and
okay.
read your face, because I know you won't answer them. But
All right.
they're going to be hard-hitting questions, of a personal nature. So I just know I'm going to be psychoanalyzing you as you read this, and if you don't give the proper answer, I'm going to interpret it for our listeners.
Do you have like a lie detector test you sent him in the mail, Grumpy, that he's going to hook himself up to?
I put my finger on his pulse. I can tell.
Okay.
Yeah, here you go.
What's your question, Grump?
No, don't worry. I'm going to sprinkle them in during the show. I'm going to catch him. I'm going to catch him off guard at certain points in time. I don't want him preparing.
Okay,
that's fine.
I don't want him getting in too much. I don't want Stefan getting in too much of a rhythm.
Now he's going to put his guard up, Grumpy. Now he's got his guard all up.
But now he doesn't know. He doesn't know when I'm going to hit him with that punch. He's looking for the right. Bam! You hit him with the left. You
You're just trying to do you Muhammad Ali, trying to do that anchor punch down.
Got to do what you got to do.
I definitely wouldn't fight you. I'll tell you that right now.
No, that's all right. I'm a lover, not a fighter. Don't worry.
Grumpy, oh God. But another item that I think that you had mentioned, we're going to need defense in order to create, more offensive rushes. I think that, right, we look at the places we improved this offseason. It wasn't necessarily in the forward group. I'd say that's stagnated, or maybe we've even taken a step backwards in that regard just because of the age of the forwards. And what we have done by annexing away Chara and Green, and now having more competent skaters, more offensive-minded defensemen, and Romanoff. And it looks like, hey, with Shalovsky, that was waived today, Grumpy and Stefan, we're going to probably have Robin Salo there, slid there into that number 6 defenseman spot. So we're going to have defensemen who are more fleet of foot, ideally, right? Maybe they're not going to be as positionally aware as the guys like your Chara and your Green, and they're going to make mistakes on that end. They're both, younger defensemen. That being said, they're quicker. They're not, ideally, we're not going to be stuck in our own zone, hemmed in our own zone with as much time. So as we're in transition, it's not like we're going to have dead legs because we just got done. Oh, Chara's out there on the ice for another 2-minute and 30-second long shift, and everybody's crawling their way back to the bench, and we just got to dump and go ahead and get a change in, and they just go ahead and secure the puck and bring it back into our defensive zone. Ideally, right, through transition, hopefully we're going to have more opportunities and chances, and have fresher legs, a little bit better skating on the back end as well, Grump and Stefan.
I mean, it's a game changer for the goalies. And I'm a goalie, so I feel like it's a cool thing, different perspective maybe. But, with the stronger defense in front of you, that should allow the goaltenders to not be facing those high leverage chances every rush. I mean, you look at Sorokin and what he had to do last year to keep the Islanders afloat for as long as he did. And he had rough patches. People look at his season and say it was amazing. He had great moments, but there was also a stretch where he was allowing pretty soft goals, just getting used to angles. Again, also last year was his first year at facing every team, essentially, because the year before that, it was you played your division. You faced X amount of teams. What was it, 8 or 7 teams the whole year? And then the playoffs, you face only those groups of forwards. So last year, he had to face new forwards from different angles, different kinds of shots, and he had to be great. For the Islanders to win, he had to be great. And Varlamov, he didn't get a training camp, off-season hip surgery. He was rehabbing from that. Didn't get training camp, didn't get any preseason games, didn't really get support when he was out there. And yes, there were some goals he would allow that, he'd want back. But you look at a stronger defense or defensive system with Trotz's system worked when he had the right pieces in place on defense. You can't run a defensive system when there are guys that can't play the defensive job that they have to play, as we saw last year. So I think for the goaltending, the Islanders shouldn't need Sorokin to make 45, 40 saves, 20 being high danger saves every night, because that's no way to win. One, it's going to tire out your goaltender. And again, Varlamov is still good. I mean, he's a year removed from being a Vezina candidate. He maybe got snubbed to being a Vezina candidate. He was unreal during the shortened season. But for goaltenders, I mean, you want them to be relaxed in there, not worrying about having to make that next save in order to win games. And I think if the defensive system can hold up, you take a lot of pressure off your netminders having to be perfect, which takes a lot of pressure off everybody else. Because if your goaltender's scrambling around, that means the defensive coverage isn't happening. And that means you're spending more time in the D zone, not the forward lines. And again, when guys like Barzal's lines are out there or Nelson's lines out there, if you're hemmed in your own zone, you just missed out on opportunities for them to make plays, because they're going to get the puck, they're going to dump it and change. And the Islanders need those guys to be able to be in the offensive zone. So I think from the defensive structure being much stronger this year, what you said, with Chara and Green gone, again, not saying anything wrong with them, but for the system Trotz wanted to run, at their age, they were unable to do what they needed to do. And again, there was injuries, and again, Pulak being out was critical. No matter if he's not scoring goals. That was a critical loss for the Islanders last year for a long time. Then Mayfield season-ending injury, which he could have come back, he said at the end, but they were out of it. It didn't make any sense. So I think this system plays into everyone. Goaltending makes life easier for goaltending. The defense creates more offense and allows for offensive players to get more offensive zone time. So we'll see what happens, but that seems to be the goal. And again, every system, whether it's an offensive system or defensive system, it's every piece has to do their job. And if they don't, then you see what happens last year, where it's a struggle each game to not only score but to win close games. Because the Islanders are a team where they're gonna have success. They're gonna have an over 500 record in 1-goal games. And last year they were at 500. I think they were 8-8 or 6-6. And this team needs to win those close games. You can't be blowing third period leads, because those are 2 points that, again, next game, you're not, what if you score 4 goals that game and you lose that game 5-4? The Islanders can't really afford to do that, especially when they're in a division where it's offensive based. They're one of the few teams where, again, defensively, they are a strong defensive team. Most teams can score 3 goals a game. The Islanders, I think, scored 2.79 last year. And that's when you can win games like that, but your defense has to be rock solid.
They're one of the few teams, I'd say, and argue one of the teams you can count on a hand that are more defensive minded in the league, that haven't put a placement on, hey, this is the way the new style of the NHL is, run and gun, fire engine hockey, lots of offense, lots of offensive acumen and creativity. Now, I think a question I've always wanted to ask too is, what do we think of Lou Lamoriello's offseason? Now, Grumpy did an analogy that I'd liked, and I'm going to have him explain it here in a second. I thought after the Mat Barzal signing, I think to myself, we still leave ourselves leeway depending on what happens this season, right? If we're in a good position come the deadline, we can try to add that bona fide winger, which we've never done, but we can try to add that top line bona fide top 6 winger to put alongside a guy like Mat Barzal. And if we're in a position where we're not in a playoff spot, because it's I would say probably more the probability than anything else, you still have the ability to get rid of your guys who are on short and expiring deals. You got your Varlamovs, you've got your players again like Mayfield that are going to have to be moved. You can get draft capital, start using that to rebuild while still having those items and still having the core pieces locked in. Now, Grumpy looks at it a little differently. He said the offseason was over. Grump, I want you to explain the analogy you used yesterday.
Okay, here's the thing. TJ insisted on wanting me to change my off-season grade.
I changed my off-season grade. That's right. I had him at a D, and I moved him to a C.
Zip it, first of all. You asked me to explain. That's what I'm doing. So don't interject. Just turn yourself on mute. Just shut up and let me do what I do. All right? Here's the thing. He wanted to know if Lou Lamoriello signing Mat Barzal to a contract extension changed my off-season grade on what he did as a general manager. And I said it did not. And my analogy was, and you can understand this, Stefen, as someone who was you're out of college now, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But someone who knows about the college experience, let's say you have a term paper that was due on August 15th, and you handed it in and it was an F or a D+. And then you say, well, hold on. I know the new semester has started already, but I want to do something here for that last term paper that I didn't get. Can you change my grade? I say no. This is a new year. The off season is over. So he does not get credit for signing Mat Barzal to increase his off-season grade.
Basically pure semantics, but I did like it. So he couldn't have gone ahead and double spaced it or changed the font to make it the 2 pages that they required. He had 1 page and a quarter, and that went ahead and docked the grade down. But I think it brings us to the question that, on a more serious note, what do you think of Lou Lamoriello's number one off season this year? And what do you think of his tenure of being an Islander or being with the Islanders organization? We're in the thought process. He's done certain things extremely well. Like he's brought back, again, legitimacy to this franchise, which is something we were in desperate need of. And we believe, hey, best things he's done, bringing back. I'm sorry, I'm not going to tell you what we think. I want to hear your opinion because the listeners on our show
feed him the answers.
I want to hear what he's going to say. But what do you think of Lou Lamoriello, number one, his offseason this year, and what do you think about his tenure as a general manager of the Islanders?
So we'll start with the offseason. It started off well. Getting Romanov, maybe it wasn't his first choice. There were rumblings at the draft that pick was going to be dealt for a guy like JT Miller. Apparently, it blew up on the draft floor. Again, Lou won't say anything, so we'll never know what could have happened. But it was a great start getting Romanov. You made your defense younger, which was a major issue last year. And then you had the lack of moves. You had the rumors speculating that the Islanders were involved with Johnny Gaudreau. It turns out they weren't. They didn't have the money to get there. Then you look at other guys. Oh, can they go get Kadri? And that was a big thing. And it seemed like Kadri was indeed coming. Now, I heard from a very credible source that Lou and Kadri were in talks the whole summer, and that Kadri wanted to be an Islander. Kadri has a great relationship with Lamoriello, but time became an issue, and Kadri wanted a deal done, and Lou was still trying to move cap space. Again, this is not from Lou, not from anyone in the organization. This is an outside source. So
from Lou, exactly, straight from Lou's mouth.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's all good. And it came down to, Kadri didn't want to wait. I mean, it's his future. It's his summer. This is a guy that is coming off a career year, older player, 31. So if you wait a couple more weeks, you might just get a one-year deal. I think there was a couple years ago, Hoffman got a professional trial with the Blues. He didn't get to sign that max deal. He waited and he got that deal. So I think Kadri knew that Calgary was interested from the start, knew that he could get the same deal as what it was rumored the Islanders were offering. He didn't want to wait. He wanted a home. He has a family. He's trying to establish a home and get settled before a season starts, and he goes that route. And then you look at the Islanders, and it seemed that because of the trust in the group, the inability to move players, especially just for cap space, didn't happen. And it's very hard to do anything and have any leverage when you don't have cap space, because you're in a world, especially when the cap didn't rise. The Islanders did not have leverage this offseason to make space. And maybe there was rumors that, could they move Josh Bailey? Could they move Anthony DeVilliers? Could they move Pajot? But teams were asking for a first to go along with that player just to take them on. And Lou had addressed it during his first press conference before the season began after the offseason and said, listen, to him, this is all from him. Like, to him, the deal that people were trying to get them to make wouldn't have made them better. Now, only opinion that matters is Lou's. And he thought that by getting rid of certain players and what they had to give up to just get players to be taken wasn't worth it. So he didn't do anything in that regard. And again, it's very hard to clear cap space when teams know you have to clear cap space. And I think maybe if he looks back, does he move some players to the deadline? But it comes down to loyalty, and people question Lou. Maybe he has too much loyalty there with certain players, and it's a fair judgment. But loyalty is very important to Lou, and I think he looked at what this team did, the back-to-back runs to the semifinals, and he probably, again, we don't know if he talked to the players, but it sounded like the players really, really trust this group. They're very close in the locker room. These guys are best friends. Their families are friends, everything like that. I think they believe, listen, give us another shot. And I that's why I said this year is a huge year, because if things go south, you may see this group, I don't think completely blown up. You have to get rid of a couple of pieces, let some young guys. You have Bellows, Wallstrom, Salo, Baville, Barzal. You have young guys here. People look at the age, and a lot of the guys are late 20s, early 30s, but there are some young guys to build around. You're not completely blowing this up. And if you were to do that, you're probably not sending Barzal to an 8-year deal. So I think it's very interesting to see what happens. As for an offseason grade, again, like I just said with grading a contract, until the season plays out, you have no idea. We could look at the Calgary Flames and the Panthers trade this offseason where Huberdeau and Weegar were traded for Tkachuk. And you look at that deal and you could say right off the bat, someone won that deal. Now, I personally thought Calgary won that deal before the extension came for Huberdeau. But if this season Calgary's terrible, Tkachuk scores 50 goals with the Florida Panthers and they go on a great run, well, Florida Panthers won the trade, at least for this year. So, again, it's very hard to judge an offseason when you don't know how the players work out. If Romanov and Dobson click really early in the year and are a dynamic pairing behind a Pelican and Pulak, and this defense is much more improved, Islanders are winning games, they're winning the close games, everything's clicking, the offense comes out, you could grade the offseason all you want, but if the moves worked, that's all there is to it. So I'm not going to give a grade just because, again, we don't know what's going to happen. As for Lambert's legacy, I think the best thing he did do was bring Trotz in, and of course he fired him or whatever happened this offseason happened. But again, like you said, he brought credibility to the organization, which had become a laughingstock. We all saw that, and the Islander fans need a turnaround now. Again, last year was last year, and I think Lou's made some decisions like signing veterans to longer term deals than maybe people want. Again, it comes down to that loyalty. Matt Martin, I look is a perfect example. Martin was traded to Toronto while Lou was at the helm there, and Lou wanted him back when he came to the island and brought him back. So you see moves like that happen, and again, you're going to judge contracts, longer term deals to guys maybe that don't deserve it. We'll see what happens as those contracts progress and as we get down to see what the Islanders do this year. But I'll go back to it. The Islanders are going to succeed because everyone's doing their part. And I think Anders Lee said that the other day. it doesn't matter what one person does. Like the fourth line is a perfect example. If the Islanders do run the fourth line back again, which it seems like they will, now can Martin play a full season? He couldn't do it last year, but again, he's coming off an ankle injury. Can Ross Johnson slot in there? Is Clutterbuck? Clutterbuck's missed the last couple of days. Will he be ready for opening night? He has Ezekiel's back healthy, which is good for him, but we need to see more offense from him on that line. But that's a line that is like a microcosm of this whole entire group. When each player is doing their part, it's successful. And you can't have one guy doing one thing and the other guy not doing it because things just won't work out. But yeah, you look at Lou's legacy, and again, it's still going. He's turning 80, I'm pretty sure, this year. Is he back for another? Does he sign another deal to stay the GM for a long time? We'll see. Does his son take over? Who knows? But he turned it.
I have to stop you
there.
there.
I was about to say, I've got.
We don't know.
Things written down. I hope not. I hope not. Sell the fucking team. If that were to happen, Property Brothers, sell the team. Ledecky, sell the freaking team now. If that were to happen, I'm sorry. There was a few things.
Let him finish. Let him finish. Shut up. Let him finish. Go ahead.
I will tell you one thing. As much as everyone looks at Lou and says, bring up his age or the way he runs the tight ship, you talk to every player in that room, they love Lou. Barzal was talking about Lou as if I would talk about my dad. Like the amount of, just they love the way he operates. They love how transparent he is when talking, especially in contract negotiation, but they love playing for this guy. And Zach Fried is another guy who was obviously, drafted by Lou in Jersey, loves him. These players, forget outside noise. These players love playing for Lou and the way he runs it. They have no issue with it. It's the outside people that do. Oh, why do they have to shave their beard? Palmieri will score more goals if he had a full beard, whatever that may be. These players truly love him. So again, it comes down to once the players turn on someone, let's say that's what happened with Trotz, who knows, that's when you make moves. But again, this is a big year for everyone. I'm not saying Lou's on the hot seat because I don't think he is. I think the whole organization and the players, everyone has to be, I'm not saying on their best behavior, but everyone's got to take a step up this year. That includes everybody in the organization for them to have success. So again, we'll see what happens, but the players love Lou. And that's all I'll say on that matter.
Grumpy, okay. I'll let you respond. I got a few things. I've got like 6 points.
I
didn't want to interrupt because he was, again, I like the points he's bringing up, but I have alternate ideas and alternate questions I want to ask.
Alternate universe, perhaps.
No, I'm not putting tinfoil on, but go ahead.
You snap the finger and the blip happens, wiped out half the planet.
Am I Thanos? No, I'm just kidding. Or are you Thanos?
Like Thanos?
Or is Stefen Thanos? Who's Thanos, Grump? Go ahead.
It was Thanos. I disagree with a lot of what you said, except for the last thing. Why I think players like playing for him because he's a straight shooter, without a doubt. You know what? There's no
in that world.
I'm sorry, TJ.
I was about to say, in that world, I can tell you from experience on the other side, people blow smoke up everybody's ass. They freaking please. They glad hand you. They lie to you straight to your freaking.
That's not what they do.
And it's all about manipulating. And how can I go ahead and manipulate this situation so it benefits me and this organization the most? And I think Lou is a guy from, again, one of the, he's a guy who I think is very genuine. I think exactly what he says is exactly what he means. I can respect that from person to person. And that's the type of person I am. That's the type of person Grumpy is. And from, just like a normal individual standpoint, I love that about him. And I think like the genuine nature he has probably is refreshing. It's like, oh, wow, this is different, right? The guy's not afraid to go ahead and tell me exactly what he's thinking. He's not going to mince words. That is very refreshing at times. And I think that's why players like him.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I had to interrupt you on is when you said possibly Lou retiring and having Fredo step in as the new Islander general manager. Because there's no way you want Fredo Lamoriello as a new GM. They need to go outside the organization for a new GM. And do you know who Fredo is?
You're talking about Chris Lamoriello.
Yes. Do you know why his name is Fredo?
I mean, Lord of the Rings, right? That's Frodo. I don't know who Fredo is.
The TJ guy. No. In The Godfather, you had Don Vito Corleone, and then you had Sonny was the hothead, Michael, and then you had the weakling, Fredo.
The incompetent one.
The screw up in the Corleone family. That's our affectionate name for Chris Lamoriello is Fredo. So
no comment.
There you go. So he understands. He understands. Like I said, for us, we think it's time to lose for Lou to step down. And just because he is 80, because I think when he was a great GM, and I'm not saying he's not a good GM, but in the 1990s and early 2000s, he was great. I think the new finances and the salary cap, I don't think he's been able to keep up. And you mentioned earlier how, they didn't have the money to sign free agents. They had $12 million going into the offseason, and all they had to re-sign was a couple of restricted free agents. That's all they had.
Yeah. The list goes on.
Here's the thing. They didn't have to extend Zach Parise in season. They didn't have to extend Cloud Clutterbuck in season. That could have saved them another $3 million or so off the cap. So you can go after a Johnny Gaudreau. And then then Lamoriello comes out and says, well, we were just trying to drive the price up. I'm sorry. To me, that's being disingenuous on his part.
That's a straight boldface. You could move. There were players you could move. You didn't have to give up value to get rid of a guy like Semyon Varlamov. Look at the goalie market this offseason. You would have gotten a king's ransom for
you would have gotten at least a first-round pick for Varlamov at the deadline, which was rumored that was what was being offered.
Let's even say the second. You're getting draft capital back in return that you can then utilize to trade off a toxic asset, i.e. Josh Bailey, i.e. somebody who's a non-contributor, to free up cap space. You have to be able to have creativity regarding handling of the cap, and I think
and I think that everything that they're complaining about the cap is all self-inflicted, all of it. Signing Casey Zizekas to a 6-year deal, that makes him unmovable. I mean, I know he's only making $2 something a year. Yeah. Okay. But it's 5 more years. He's 31 years old. No one's going to take that contract on. Giving Anders Lee 7 years. No, I mean, I'm sorry. You can't do that. And Kyle Palmieri, 4-year deal, $5 million per. I mean, I don't know. For me, it's like, let these guys test the market, say this is what we're willing to offer, but then you can go test the market. But I feel like sometimes they chase their own tail or offer their own guys way too much because of the loyalty reason. And I think they pay too much. You mentioned Matt Martin. He earned a nickname, the $6 million man, when he re-signed that contract, 4 years, 1.5 per. So for me, it's like you don't need to re-sign fourth-line players to 4 or 6-year deals. It's just unnecessary. I mean, to me, that's frustrating. And when they say, well, you don't have the cap money, they were one of the top 10 teams in the league with cap money in the offseason, without a doubt. $12 million with only a couple of restricted free agents to sign. I mean, they just mismanaged the cap. And I just don't think that he's in touch with how to make those maneuverings work like some of the other younger GMs are.
Yeah, and again, we talk about. I think that it moves it kind of to a mindset too, to where you talk about and I think it kind of is all is intertwined. What I'm going to bring up, you talk about the loyalty. It's like the fan base too, and I'll say that I feel like the organizations had this standpoint as well. It's like we feel like we cannot possibly lose player A or player B because they play such an intricate role into our team's success. How could we ever find a way to replace fourth liner, third liner, borderline middle six? How could we ever find a way to replace them? Very simply, teams do it every single offseason. Other franchises do it every single offseason. This fan base has been tricked. I'm not sure even tricked is the right word, but this fan base has been,
put under an evil spell.
Well, not even put it under an evil spell. This fan base has come to this thought process that no, we can't possibly separate ways or move ways with players because they're so important to this team's success. Teams do it all off season long, and sometimes that new blood, sometimes those fresh faces do allow for the increased production across all lines. And having a situation to where there's actual competition for spots breeds the best production out of players. These lineups, and this year, maybe not, I don't know what's going to happen, but for the most part, every single season under at least Trotz, and we'll see how things go under Lambert, every freaking line was hammered in granite before the season started. And it's really tough as a player to have that motivation, have that gusto, have that energy, have that I'm actually having a chance to fight for a position when, it's like, oh yeah, gotcha. I'm not going to have a chance to go ahead and win the spot because Andy Green and Zdeno Chara here. Doesn't matter how many times Chara gets walked around like he's freaking like a totem pole out there on the ice. Doesn't matter once NHL legend, once, a Hall of Fame caliber player at that time period, he's a shell of what his self was. And, you think to yourself, gotcha, Salo sent down there to Bridgeport. He did need to improve, but, at what point did we ever go ahead and deviate away from the plan was at the beginning of the year and make adjustments, right? I think that Barry would struggle in that spot. We'll be interested to see how that goes forward, but it kind of brings it back to our fan base doesn't think that we can afford to lose anybody of this team because every single part's so integral and important.
It comes down to loyalty. Well, management's loyal, the fan base is loyal, and again, loyalty has its faults. I think the other day, Lambert said loyalty is a two-way street. It's great to be loyal unless it impedes your ability to have success. And again, I'm not going to comment on Lambert and his decision-making for that, but I will go to what you just said about battling for spots. And I think something that fans were not happy with is the fact that there was no PTOs brought into camp. And we asked Lou, hey, do you plan on having any PTOs? He said no. And we asked the question why. And he said the only reason he would bring in a PTO is only if that player had a shot to win a starting job. And people look at that and go, okay, well, then there's no internal competition to fight for a spot. Guys like Bellows and Wallstrom are getting NHL spots, or one of them's going to be the extra forward, and that's that. But what Lou did point out was there was internal competition, and I don't think people realize that till camp happened when you had a guy like Atu Ratu. This guy came up and it was very impressive. For people that didn't get to watch him play, he plays like he's been in the league for 10 plus years. IQ-wise, off the charts, he seems to be in the right position every time he plays. And, of course, he's only played 8 total games in the AHL. 6 came in the playoffs in the AHL. So I don't think anyone should have an issue with him, Holmstrom, or Dufour being sent down. I think Holmstrom didn't impress the way he should have. I think he should have been at the top of that totem pole if you're ranking Holmstrom, Ratu, and Dufour, and I think Ratu was ahead of him. I think the Islanders really expected Holmstrom to break out. I mean, he had chances to play with Barzal in preseason. You didn't see enough. You saw some flashes of, okay, he's got a great reach, but not consistent enough, and the Islanders need consistency. But a guy like Soshnikov comes over and signs, and this guy survived the second round of cuts. I asked Lambert today, like, what about Soshnikov's game do you like? And he goes, speed. Speed, again, you're talking about transitioning. You need, as much as you need defensemen to jump up, you need forwards to keep up with the play mentally and physically and just skating wise, but also the guy kills penalties. I think last night he killed over 2.5 minutes on the penalty kill unit. He's a smart player. He has some moves in his arsenal, toe drags, he could do that stuff. He's a smart player. Now, maybe you look at last night and on the 2-on-1, maybe he didn't get back in time. But again, he's still learning the system, and I asked him too. He played overseas after playing the NHL for a couple of years as a fourth line grinding player. He goes back to the KHL and he's playing top 4 minutes. And I said, what is top 6 role? Excuse me. I said, what's the biggest difference? He goes, I just got to figure out the speed of the NHL game again. And already having legs and having that speed is a reason why he's still on the current roster right now. And other guys like a Holmstrom isn't still here. So I think there was definitely internal competition without there being a PTO, and we'll see if Soshnikov makes the roster. He very well could. Things would have to happen. You'd have to probably waive Ross Johnson, but given his contract, nobody's picking him up anyway. I think that was the whole point of his deal, is that if they ever need to send him down, no one would touch him. Again, that seems to be not, again, they value Ross Johnson and what he does. And again, if Martin can't go, you put Ross Johnson in, but also a guy like Kiefer Bellows with, a stronger shot, a better offensive player than Johnston. He's hitting 5 to 6 guys a night and racking up the hit total. So is Johnston now a guy that they don't mind sending down if Bellows could play that fourth line role if need be? Obviously not ideal. Bellows was brought to this team to be a goal scorer. Same with Wallstrom, but Bellows does bring a physical element, sort of what you saw with Dal Cole. But of course, you think Bellows has more upside to scoring goals than Dal Cole. And Dal Cole had no choice but to play a physical brand of hockey because he just didn't have the ability at the NHL level to keep up with play. So again, it'll be interesting to see what that final roster is. But besides them not having PTOs, there was for sure internal competition the whole entire time at training camp, and there still will be before the season begins.
Now, just a couple of things you mentioned. I had a question about how you felt about Islander team speed. To me,
yeah,
we're one of the slower teams in the league. And you mentioned Shoshnikov, and I 100% agree. And I'd forgotten about him. But who has impressed you this preseason? Now, did you get to see the games live or?
Yeah.
Okay, good, fantastic. Because you learn a lot more than watching on TV. So,
of course.
Who? And I'm not going to. I'll just. Who has impressed you the most, and who's disappointed? You mentioned Ratu, and I 100% agree with him. I was lucky to have an opportunity to see Bridgeport play the Charlotte Checkers last year, and he impressed me there. And the thing that impressed me the most about him, as you mentioned, he had only played a few games in the North American style, but you could tell, okay, this guy has potential. I thought that Kyle McLean was another guy who I expected to step up a little bit when he came here, but it looked like it was a little bit too much for him in the first preseason game he played. But he was a guy who impressed me when I saw him in the playoffs, and I thought that Robin Salo was probably the best defenseman, but I didn't feel that he had progressed to the state that he is now. I think we saw what we've seen so far this year for him, and I know I'm kind of stealing your thunder here. I'm just giving my observations. I thought that he showed that he deserves a chance to be the starting bottom pair defenseman with Mayfield. To me, the most disappointing guy is Simon Holmstrom. I could not understand why they put him with Barzal. To me, he's not going to make it in the league. He just isn't. They might want to force him on the team eventually, but he's just not good enough considering how long he's been in the AHL. You breathe on him, he gets knocked over. He's allergic to the corners. Like I said, that's just my slant on him. But tell me who has impressed you and who disappointed you. And I guess I'm talking about more of the young guys as opposed to the veterans.
Yeah, so first I want to start with a player that didn't get to play in any preseason games, and that's Isaiah George. He was a 4th-round pick in this year's draft. This guy has one more year with the London Knights in the juniors, and this guy he's got all the tools to be a successful NHLer. And you watch him at practice, he does not back down. He went back and forth with Aatu Räty, who's got a couple of inches and probably 30 pounds in him, didn't back down. Got to the point of practice where Räty actually cross-checked him because he's getting so frustrated. You look at him on the ice throughout development camp. I mean, this guy's could very well be a special player. Now he's a couple of years away. He could skate. He could escape situations. His passing's great. His offensive instincts are great. He said that he wants to work more on the offensive side of the puck. But I asked Matthew Maggio, another draft pick this year, who I really enjoyed watching at camp, and Maggio said during his interviews during the NHL draft, they asked him which player that have you played against is the hardest player to go against, and he said Isaiah George. And that's talking about the whole entire, junior level. And Isaiah George, I think very well could be the steal of the draft. Just for he's got all the tools, and again, it comes down to IQ. That's a real big thing for me because you can tell. Again, a player hasn't played that long, but you can tell right away if they have the smarts to put Aatu Räty. Again, his IQ for as young as he is, and again, he did play overseas against men, and that's a huge thing. You look at the difference between him and Dufour, the maturity level, not like personally wise, but Aatu Räty is very mature for his age. Again, going up against men is much different than going up against teenagers and dominating. Räty understands, and I think if this defensive system holds up and Lambert's here for however long he is here and Räty gets to play in the system, Trotz would have loved the way Räty plays because it's not about him. It's about the system, and he could do everything you need him to do on all sides of the puck. Again, there are mistakes here and there. Again, he's never really played in NHL. He's in his training camp last year, but Aatu Räty for sure is going to have a very long NHL career. I think his ceiling, probably a second-line center, but a very good, reliable two-way centerman. He went up in faceoffs against Barzal at practice during scrimmages. I'm pretty sure he won all of them. So this is the guy that.
Hold on. That's not really.
Barzal struggles in the faceoff, but just to say, he doesn't back down from any situation. It doesn't matter who he's going against. It doesn't matter how many years he's played. He's not going to back away from any situation, and I think that's something Islander fans have a lot to look forward to. Going back to Maggio, I mean, this guy in Bridgeport right now for training camp. I talked to him. His aspirations are to play for Bridgeport. He wasn't at the NHL draft. He's a little older. He went overseas and played in Sweden for a little bit. I think he's very fast, very shifty, makes those smart plays. Again, going back to the IQ, a lot of players have the physical ability. They just have to learn the game. Willem Dufour, I think, is a great shot. I mean, Wallstrom said he's got an absolute cannon. You see it at practice. But he's never played higher than the junior level, and I think the NHL game is a little too fast for him right now. People say that his skating is not anywhere close where it needs to be. I think that it's judged a little too much. When he gets going, he is very fast. I know in the game against the Devils at the Prudential Center, he won every loose puck battle. He skid down the ice, beat out some icings. I mean, this guy is fast when he gets going, but he just has to work on. He's very heavy on his skates. He has to work on that and just, again, learn how to play the AHL speed, NHL speed game, because in juniors, you saw it with Dow Cole. They dominate juniors because when they get the shot lane, their shot's good enough to win. But in the NHL, that shot lane's not going to be there at the same rate, and you're going to have a lot less time to get the shot off. So Dufour's another guy I think high potential, but he's going to have to learn the game at the AHL level. And there's no rush for these guys. As much as the Islanders are getting older, the last thing you want to do, I think Lou even said this, the last thing, you'd rather wait on a player too long than bring him up too quickly, because that destroys development. For players that, again, I go back to Holmstrom, development camp, he never stood out. And I think development camp, you want him to be one of those leaders there. He should have been blowing guys out of the water there in terms of speed. I mean, you look at, Johnny Boychuk and Dennis Hatterberg are there as coaches, and they're flying around these guys. Because, again, they're former NHL players. And you thought maybe Holmstrom should have been a guy that when he was on the ice during development camp, he stood out. And again, he got a real good look playing with Barzal. I don't think he did enough. I think it's a huge year for him in Bridgeport. He's coming off a career year, 12 goals, 31 assists in 68 games. He had 3 goals and an assist in the postseason. But yeah, it's time. He was drafted back in 2019. Again, COVID has really hurt a lot of players, and I think that people look at it and it's like, well, COVID affected all of us, but seasons were canceled. That was development where, Atu Ratu fell in the draft. His stock fell majorly because he said, mental toll of being locked in your house, go to the rink by yourself. He said it took a real big toll on him, and it took a while for him to get comfortable. But again, Holmstrom's still young. He's 21 years old, but there comes a point where you're in the system in Bridgeport for a couple of years. You got to eventually take that next step, because then, 4 years. And then you got to take that next step where you turn into a prospect that's not going to pan out. And the Islanders need scorers. And if you're not going to be able to do that right now, they don't need defensive-minded players because they have that. They need young forwards coming that are going to score. A big year for Wahlstrom. Trotz really took it out on him in the media, and he said he needed the tough love to grow. And Wahlstrom never grasped the defensive system. Now he gets a clean slate with Lambert. Lambert said everyone's going to get a clean slate. It's about this year, not looking back. And Wahlstrom still has to understand the system and play the system. I mean, the reason he didn't work with Barzal, and like many people that don't work with Barzal initially, is that Wahlstrom is a guy that wants the puck on his stick. Well, if you play with a guy like Barzal, that's not your job. Your job is to get open, and when the puck comes to you, you let the shot rip as fast as you can, hard and low, whatever that may be, because your other linemate, whether it's a Lee, a Palmieri, Parise, are crashing that for the rebounds. And I think you saw last year, they broke up Lee and Barzal. And, it was a big deal. And Trotz said sometimes when players are together, you got to separate them. And I remember Bellows got a chance with Barzal, and early in the first period, probably a couple minutes in, Barzal deep and dangled in the slot, dropped it to Bellows, and he fumbled the puck. Next shift, Lee was back with Barzal. So we'll see how Lambert sees to operate, but you need young guys to come into the lineup and score, but also understand what their roles are. And I think for Holmstrom, like you said, he can't be the flashy player along with Barzal. He's got to go to the gritty area, same because you have guys like Parise, and you got to play that role and get the puck to Barzal. And when Barzal drops it to you, you got to shoot it in, find a way to score, get a good shot off for the rebound. And I think there's a reason why no one has truly clicked with Barzal. He's not an easy player to play with, but that's why I look at a guy like Parise. And again, he gets knocked for his age. I think that's, in my opinion, ridiculous. Just because he hasn't played, again, he's not in his prime. I'm not going to say that. And a 38-year-old is not a stable long-term plan with Barzal. And it's about that other guy. But Parise understands. You talk to Parise, he knows Barzal has the puck. He's going to draw all the attention. When I get the puck, I'm shooting. And if Barzal shoots, I'm crashing the net. I'm fighting for the pucks in the corners, getting it to the point, or back to Barzal. You need players like that, younger, to understand that that's what you have to play. And hopefully, for the Islanders' sake, those young players like a Walsh and Bellows are doing a lot better of that, which is why he got playing time at the end of last year. Using his body, going to the dirty areas, not hogging the puck, getting rid of it quickly. When you play with talented players, it's not about you having the puck. It's about what you have to do to help that player out. And the offense, no matter if Barzal doesn't shoot the way he needs to shoot, the offense is on that line specifically runs through him, and you are the benefactor of whatever he does. And you have to be ready. So a guy like Holmstrom, if he gets another chance at the NHL at some point, whether he's playing with a Barzal or a Nelson or even a Pajot, you get the puck in your stick, you got to shoot, because especially with the offense and the way they work, you're not going to get 40 shots on goal a game. You're not going to have that opportunity. So when you get an opportunity, you have to make it count. I think on the 2 years they went to the semifinals, they didn't generate a lot, but when they did generate, they found ways to score. Those high danger chances, they were potting them. And I think what happened last year is they didn't generate enough chances, and those players that score goals, for whatever reason, you look at a guy like Palmieri, 3 goals in 30 games, post, crossbars, miss nets. A lot of guys are like that. The Islanders don't have the luxury of, well, we'll get another chance later in the game to make that count. It's about being in that moment and finding a way to make that count. Same thing with Beauvillier. It's a big year for him. He's got wheels. I don't know if you could say he impressed in so far in preseason. I think a lot of guys have not speed-wise, but Beauvillier, talking to him, when he is going and he's creating chances with his skates, that line, when the Lee Nelson Bavoli line, when they really took off that year and then the postseason, Bavoli was doing a lot for that line. That went unnoticed. A 1-on-3 turned into an offensive scoring chance because he used his skates to either crash the net and cut to the net or peel back like Barzal does in the offensive zone, find the point guy and create chances with his skates. So I think Bavoli's a young guy as well. Got to use your skates, but understand who you're playing with. And that's, I think, the biggest thing holding a lot of these young guys back is when you get a call up, there's no time is of the essence when you have the puck on your stick, and you got to be able to get rid of it quickly, or that chance goes by the boards. And again, the Islanders aren't a team that generates that many chances, so you have to make them count.
See, I thought that, and we've said it on this show numerous times, Beauvillier was the line driver for the second line. Some guys drive lines. Barzal drives the first line. Pajot drives the third line. And we always felt that Beauvillier was the driver of the second line. When they didn't work, it's because he wasn't, I don't want to use the word working, but he wasn't performing optimally, shall we say.
I agree.
Now, to me, the team speed, I love what they did in the draft this year. Yeah. It's a departure from what they've done in previous seasons. And I think because the biggest issue that I've had is, okay, we're playing like it's 1990. The rules and the way the league is set up now, it's 2022. It's speed. You don't have to be as big as you had to, but you have to be able to skate. And that's why I love what they did this offseason, in the offseason with Romanov, then with O'Dalius and George and Finley, who you didn't mention. But see, those are the guys that I'm interested in. Maggio's an overager, so I don't know what he's going to bring.
Newkirk also impressed. He has a shot. He could shoot. I mean, he sniped Sorokin in one of the scrimmages at Northwell Ice Center. He's got a shot. And again, like Maggio, very smart. They get rid of the puck quick, and that's something I was really watching for, because a lot of these young guys, you're at camp for the first time. You want to show what you can do. And sometimes doing too much is a negative. And usually, like Dufour, there's a lot of times on one-on-one battles. We know how good Dufour is with his shot. But the speed, getting around players or making that, too many moves, that hurts you when you're a guy like Dufour and you have a shot. Get the lane and just shoot it. It might not go in, but coach is looking at, okay, did that just produce a rebound? Did it go off the boards really fast and come back to the other far post? Gretzky has the quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. For a guy like Dufour, he might not score every shot he takes. He's definitely not going to. But because of how hard his shot is, probably a rebound there, and that's as important as scoring on that first shot.
And it seems like Dufour has the smarts, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He has vision, just watching him in juniors and even a little bit in the exhibition games. It seems like, he had, but to us anyway, his skating is subpar right now. It's something he drastically needs to work on. And for me, I wasn't expecting a whole lot this year, but for me, it's like, okay, next year you need to have another gear. I mean, I don't care what you do I don't even care what you do in Bridgeport. It should be all about you improving your skating next off season, because if he wants to be truly somebody they can count on, he has to improve his skating. And that's just from our point of view.
No, you're definitely correct. The thing I was saying before about the speed is that he doesn't get any credit for his skating ability. And I think that's not fair, just for the fact that when he's a big boy, but when he gets going, he flies. That's why I looked at him and, if he could get the skating better, he could be, a top 6 player because of that shot and the ability to, if he gets the puck in the stick, just shoot it like a Pastore, where they get open, they get the shot off. Hoffman, I mean, you want more defensive liability there, but he's probably right now a bottom 6 NHL player because he's physical, he's big, boy, and again, those aren't lines that are full of speed, but yeah, he has to work on his skating, and he also has to work on, he has strong IQ and he knows what he's doing out there, but the game's so fast. And for a guy that hasn't ever played overseas, even like a guy like Ratu, he has to work on just understanding the AHL, NHL game. It's a drastic. That's why you see guys that dominating juniors turn into nothing, because they can do it at that level against those kids in that age group. But now you're going to an AHL where maybe it's not as competitive as the NHL, but it's probably up there because these are all guys fighting to make it, to live out their dream. They could be 35-year-old players, or they could be 25-year-olds. They're all fighting out there because their jobs are on the line. They need to prove it each and every shift they belong. And that's going to be a new experience for Dufour, because he's used to going against younger players that already were drafted maybe, or are already top players locked in to get drafted. And that's a speed league, speed skating offensive league. Defense is not really a thing there. the draft, you look at, okay, guys scored 56 goals. That's an unreal season. But you look at, okay, well, how is his defense? Well, that league's not really geared toward defense. So I think it'll be a real wake-up call for before early on in Bridgeport, and we'll see how fast he can adapt. But yes, the skating's got to be better and just quicker decision-making. And I think, he has an opportunity to play big minutes down there. I think he should definitely be regarded as a top prospect for the team, but you'll know right away if he could do it. I think you'll know right away just after 20, 30 games in Bridgeport. If you don't see the skating get better, or even just, maybe the skating might take a little longer, but the IQ and all that kind of things, he's shooting a lot more from the outside, not really cutting to the middle. That might show improvement. So I think you take the little things before now, and as the season goes along, at the end of the year, you look back and go, okay, X, Y, and Z, he didn't improve in, but hey, he improved in ABC over here. You call that a win because you just need to see improvement from him. And again, it's a brand new league. It's going to take a little bit for a guy like Dufour because he's used to using his body to get around much smaller, younger players and get shots off against goaltenders. No offense to them, who are not as talented or as big as NHL goalies. So it'll be definitely a wake-up experience for him. But I still think he's got a boatload of potential, and we'll see as the Bridgeport season goes for him, Ratu, and again, Holmstrom, what they can do with under Brent Thompson again here.
Two-part question, TJ, then I'll let you talk.
I was about to say, Jesus Christ.
Don't worry.
Okay, go ahead.
Don't worry about it.
Hey, baby, let me go ahead, Grumpy. Here we go. Hold on a second.
Okay, here we go. Quick two-part question. Yeah. Have you been impressed by Kiefer Bellows this offseason? Because I certainly this preseason, because I certainly have. And what do you see as the four-line combinations going into the season? And here's the third part. Who brings Josh Bailey his juice box? Is his mom. Like when he's skating up and down the wall, Josh, you need yourself a little juice box to make sure you have the energy to skate towards the net.
A three-part question. Jesus.
That was a three-part question.
I'm going to avoid the third part of that question.
Right.
As you understand. So the first question was Kiefer Bellows. I was impressed right from the get-go when he signed the contract extension. This guy, he said all the right things as you want someone to say. He goes, I want to win a starting job. And I think through camp, he's definitely stood out. His shot looks a little bit harder. He's much quicker with his release, and that's something that obviously he was drafted because of. He has an absolute shot. But I think he's understanding, okay, how to play the hits. That's a huge part of his game now, and I think that makes him, worthy of more minutes. He's also having fun, and I think that's hard for some. Well, shouldn't be having fun. He should be focusing, but I think last year was stressful for a lot of players. You saw it at the rink. You saw, they were laughing, yeah, of course, and smiling because they're playing a kid's game and they're having fun doing it. But Kiefer Bellows, even today, they're laughing around. He's joking. He seems like he fits in more here with this group. It's a family atmosphere, and I think they really took him under his wing. I've been impressed. Maybe he hasn't had the production, but again, no one during preseason has had production. Their offense has struggled as they get used to this new system in place. But I've been impressed. The other day, he was the best hitter on the ice during training camp that morning. Just the speed, the intensity, he was going all out, and I think he's geared to have a big year if he gets the minutes. Now to your second point, I'm pretty sure you have three lines locked up. Your third line, Pajot line is your question mark. You have, whether it's your first or second, however you want to line it up. And Lee Nelson and Bo are going to get a chance. Last year, through March and April, that was a line that was going well, and Bavilli didn't get a lot of credit for that, but he was racking up the assists on that line. Like you said, he plays a huge part in that line, and it goes by the boards, and I think he deserves more credit for what he did last year, especially in that second half. First half was really tough for him. He was a healthy scratch at one point. Look at the other line. You have Parise, Barzal, Palmieri. Like I said, Palmieri is going to have to be the goal scorer on that line, or at least getting shots on net, because Parise is going to crash the net. You know what you get from him. And Barzal, 15 goals isn't going to cut it. He has the potential to be a point-per-game player, and I know in a system like this, or last year's system, that's very hard to do, and I think that's why his contract and just Barzal in general is very hard to compare to someone else, because other players are dominating point-per-game players over in the system they're in. Like you said, defensive systems are really not common at all. So I think Palmieri is going to be has to be a big player. Fourth line, you run the MC square line out there with Johnston filling in, maybe Bellows, and your third line's the question mark. Now, say whatever you want about Josh Bailey. He's going to play. I think he's going to at least start. We'll see what Lane does in terms of leashes for veterans. Again, everyone said last year was a huge year, first 82-game season, but very hard to base last year on anything again because of everything that could go wrong did. So it's very hard to say that, that was the year, like, that's where they're going to judge. And I think this year is bigger than last year for everything that did happen last year and that you kept the team the same. So you have Pageau in the middle. Bellows is getting looked on the left with Bailey on the right. And I don't think Wallstrom's spot is, concrete, which is a good thing. Because if it was concrete, then what's the point of a lot of, Bellows doesn't get another chance. Player Soshnikov doesn't get a chance. And Wallstrom actually hasn't skated over the last couple of days. Him, Clutterbuck, and Mayfield haven't. And we asked Lane if there's concern for opening night. He said there shouldn't be any concern. But again, they're not going to divulge any injury stuff to us. But if Wallstrom's not ready to go for the start of the year, I could see Bellows. I could see Soshnikov, getting the spot as well. Again, Lambert loves his speed. And you just said, you're in the NHL where speed is very important. So if you have a guy that could go up the ice and skate with Pageau, and you have a guy like Bellows, again, Bellows will be that like Palmieri role. You get the puck in your stick, you shoot for the rebound, you shoot to score. You need that. If Wallstrom's healthy, it comes down to, okay, Wallstrom, Bellows, Bailey. Like I said, loyalty. Bailey's 7 games, not that this should be an automatic to play, but he's 7 games shy of 1,000. You could talk about, again, this is a player that was played. He struggled last year like many. You look at the last preseason game, which, again, you're going against a Flyers team that's the Flyers. Take it with a grain of salt. 1 goal and 2 assists. He did everything. And I forgot who said it on the Flyers broadcast last night, but they made a good point. They said on a top line, Bailey's your checker, and on a bottom line, Bailey's your scorer. And I thought that was a great way to look at it because it's based on where Bailey plays. His role does change. Now, I don't think he's going to be the goal scorer. He has to rack up the assists for sure. But on a line with Pageau, who's could do everything. He's versatile. I think that's why people were rumored like Islanders should trade him this past offseason. I think he has so much value that goes unnoticed. And there's a lot of guys in management says it all the time. Well, he does this and does that, and it's not replaceable. And you said it before that, Islander fans get connected to those guys that they deem irreplaceable. But Pageau's a top penalty killer. Does everything, defensive, smart hockey player, wins faceoffs. So I think if you look at it and it's Bellows or Wallstrom, Bailey, and Pageau, you have their goal scorer is going to be Wallstrom or Bellows. Pageau is going to be your defensive guy getting back and helping out with transitioning. And Bailey's going to have to make the plays in the offensive zone. And then, like I said, 4th line is your MC squared. And then the defense, from the beginning, Salo was the only player playing with Mayfield. No one else got a shot. Now the question becomes the 7th defenseman. I think Dennis Cholowski had a big chance, and he did blow it a little bit. You saw early on in the preseason that his defensive game he really needs to work on. Now, he's a former 1st overall pick that was put on waivers by an expansion team and picked up by the Capitals. A number 1st-round pick doesn't get put on waivers 3 times in a season, whatever that may be. And I think, he knows Doug Huda from their time in Detroit. And I think I asked him if that was the reason why he came here. He said no, but it does help to have a coach that knows you. And we'll see if he could, figure it out in maybe a defensive system. The Islanders know what Aho is. He has to work on his defensive game. He can transition a bit, but we've seen him make mistakes often. I don't think he can be counted on defensively the way the Islanders need him to be, again, in a defensive system. I was very high on Hutton because you look at any guy fighting for a defensive job, he's your best, strongest defensive defenseman. And again, the Islanders don't need more offense than defense in terms of, Hutton and Mayfield, again, could be a shutdown defensive pairing. Hutton's, besides last night, he had bobbled the puck a couple of times that led to the breakaway goal. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of the guy that scored that one. I don't know what the name was exactly, but it was very difficult.
Philadelphia Flyer player, X.
Exactly. But Hutton's bobbled the puck a little bit at camp. But again, I think they trust his defensive game, not necessarily his offensive game, because he's not there for offense. But one player that really stood out last night and has really been underrated in terms of winning that job is Paul Ledoux. And I think he played very well last night. He showed a shot that we really haven't had a strong chance to look at him, but he's got a great shot. He was reliable last night. He's looked very good in the preseason. Now, does he win the 7th job? It's tough. I don't know if it'll be Aho. I think Hutton had a really strong chance. Again, he had a mistake last night, and you don't know how much you get judged by one mistake. But this is a league where you gotta figure it out quickly. And I think again, you know what Aho is, but you look at a 7th defenseman, and that's only going to play a part if someone gets hurt. But look at the Islanders; they don't have a strong history of staying healthy on the defensive side every year. So at least some point, there's going to be somebody out, and you got to trust someone to come in. We spoke to Hutton. He got to play in the NHL level last year for the first time, and he said he does not want to go back to Bridgeport. Once you get a taste of NHL action, you don't want to ever play in a league lower. And the thing about Hutton that's really stood out, the way he talks and just the way he plays, Doesn't matter what the situation is, he's very calm. Now, that has its downfalls, like a play at the blue line where you're fumbling in and maybe you're too casual and the puck hops over and it's a chance at a goal for the opposition. But behind his own net, if there's pressure on, he doesn't panic. And I think maybe you look at, Dobson in his first year, he panicked. The puck was on his stick, he panicked. And when a guy like Boychuk was his partner, not the fastest of skaters at that point, and we saw the struggles of that pairing, which kind of led to Andy Green being dealt here because he was a guy that still, even though he was in the upper 30s, could skate. And if Dobson made a mistake, he was there and be able to get back. And I think for Hutton, having a calm guy back there and entering into lineup when a defenseman is hurt or needs a break or whatever the case may be, seems like the smartest move. But I think Paul Adu has certainly put himself in the conversation for that. And of course, you have the goaltending. Varlamov, your backup. I don't think it's going to be like a Vasilevsky situation yet or a Shesterkin situation because there's value in Varlamov. Again, he's healthy. He looks great at camp. Now, again, he didn't get preseason last year or training camp at all. He went in ice cold to a season, again, where the defense wasn't great in front of him. And that exposed a lot. You look at the season Robin Leonard had on the island. Was Robin Leonard an elite goalie in the NHL? Is he an elite goalie? No. But the system allows for goaltenders to play to that level when it's working. And I think Varlamov was, he didn't play last year. And the preseason, that hurt his ability to get ready. And also the defensive firm didn't help him out, where in years past, he hasn't been relied upon to make those ridiculous saves. He didn't have to. And the same thing with Sorokin last year, is like I said before, when you force your goalies to sprawl out, they may make those 3 or 4 ridiculous saves and might allow a weak one just because they're exhausted. A pressure mentally, physically. So I think Sorokin's going to play. Could we see him play 60 games, 55? We know he could do it. We know he can handle it. And again, if the system's stronger, that makes his life a little bit easier. But Varlamov, if he could get back to the way he was, which I still think he could, again, system being stronger and him having a camp, he is a top goaltender in this league when he's on, when the system's on. I think he deserves to play. But again, if he doesn't play well and Sorokin plays great, you limit Varlamov starts and he's out of here at the end of the season. But I wouldn't also rule off if he decides to take a pay cut because he loves his time here, loves being here. If he decides, you know what, I'll take a hefty pay cut. I'll sign back for $2 million, $2.5 million, which is where you're going to have to pay a backup anyway if Skark's not ready to be back and be a backup. And I think if he could have a great season this year as a backup to Sorokin and it works, I don't think there's a harm in bringing him back if you're going to pay a backup who doesn't know the system or anything like that and hasn't proven to have success here. So it's interesting season to see what Varlamov does, but I think he's going to have a bounce back season. But again, Sorokin's going to have to be the guy because he gives you the best chance to pick up points on a nightly basis, and that's got to be the guy that Lambert rolls out more often than not.
Okay, TJ, I know you need to do an ad read.
I was about to say, I've got Grumpy. You've used all your questions.
I know. I just want to say one thing.
Notes. Yeah,
take your point, and then I promise I'll shut up for a little while. One thing, here's the thing. Let's say Varlamov they do have a gentleman's agreement where he wants to come back at $2 million per. You absolutely move him at the deadline for a pick and then sign him back. But it seems like they don't even. Lambert doesn't even consider that. Go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, let's read the ad. And then I was about to say, I've got a few things I want to bring up because I've been writing down things. I've just been sitting quiet on the background like a fly on the wall.
All right, just read
today.
The ad.
Stick it where the sun don't shine, Grump. But we do have an ad today to read from DraftKings. Hockey fans, it's finally time to hit the ice again. And thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you're in for the season of a lifetime. New customers can bet just $5 on any team and get $200 in free bets if they win. Hey, and, if it wasn't enough excitement alone, right, you can turn small bets into even bigger payouts with same-game parlays. So you could say, hey, I'm going to bet the Islanders are going to win. Josh Bailey's going to score a power play goal. We're going to have a shutout from Sorokin. We're going to do X, Y, Z, and you can make millions of dollars, Grumpy. And you can combine multiple bets, like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, for your shot at an even bigger payday. And DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, and you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code THPN and bet $5 on any NHL team to win their game and get $200 in free bets if they do. Again, that's promo code THPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See the show notes in the description for additional details.
Hey, good job, TJ.
That was well done.
I was about to say, you gave me enough time to switch back over to the layout I wanted here. Well, thank you there. Thank you, Stefen, for those kind words. I do have some questions. You've been mentioning a lot about loyalty. And I guess it's been a big talking point of yours. I know it's a big talking point of Lou's too. I come from the standpoint of as individuals, right? I like loyalty. I really do. But as an organization and as my team, you talk about there's goods, there's pros and cons of loyalty. I can point out the cons of loyalty that have affected this team firsthand. Not trading guys like Andy Green, Zdeno Chara, Zach Parise, Cal Clutterbuck before he broke his wrist. Not trading away guys to acquire assets, to acquire draft capital that you can then use to, again, to get rid of toxic assets you have on your team or guys who don't perform, to free up that cap space, right? We could say, hey, we made those handshake gentleman agreement that we weren't going to trade away your Charas. We weren't going to trade away, anybody that we had that handshake agreement on. Some people will say, hey, what are you going to get? A 5th round pick, a 6th round pick? Yeah, well, sometimes you hit on those 5th or 6th round picks and they end up being guys like Zetterberg or Datsuk. So yeah, you kind of have to say, I want as many freaking kicks at the can as humanly possible. Just looking at it by the pure numbers. So we can say, hey, tangibly, I could see where that loyalty hurts us. We talk about where the loyalty benefits us. I really don't see too much where it has. I mean, maybe we can argue the hometown deals that Pelech and Pulak have taken, but I think you can even make the devil's argument, or the devil's play devil's advocate and say Pelech is a defensive defenseman who doesn't put up points. When it comes down to it, you get paid as a defenseman based off of how many points you put up. Ryan Pulak, you mentioned, got to work on a slap shot, got to do that. The guy doesn't put the puck in the net, doesn't put the puck on target. Sorry. I mean, he kind of is what he is at 28 years old. And, you love him. He serves a purpose and role, but he's not an offensive dynamo. And you could say for Mat Barzal, I love him. I think he's the most dynamic player on this team. I think he's truly special and valuable. But if you're just looking off of the performance and the actual points he's put up, right, as a forward top line guy, your job is to put up points. Your job is to create. The point totals haven't been there over the last 2-3 years. So you can very easily say when you're talking about the pay, that's pretty much, it's on. I still think he took a hometown discount.
I agree.
Somewhat. I mean, like you look at guys, 12.5 million for guys who are bona fide, unbelievable, elite caliber players in the NHL. You're getting 9.15. I think that's kind of on par to what he should be paid. I'm just wondering where the pluses are for loyalty. I don't see unrestricted free agents lining up at the door to go play for the brand new arena, the brand new practice facility, the fantastic nightlife in New York, the great community and atmosphere. I don't see unrestricted free agents lining up at the door to come here. I'm just wondering where the loyalty plays a positive part for us as a fan base and us for the organization. That's what I'm kind of confused with.
Well, I think you saw loyalty when the group wasn't broken up after their first run to the semifinals. And again, this is all opinionated, and the fan base, again, loyalty has its perks and doesn't. You see guys like we talked about. You just mentioned guys that don't put the puck in the net getting paid like guys that do. And I think, again, it comes down to the system. It really does. You said, how do you pay a guy like Pelech that much money? It's because in the system, he holds as much value as a defensive guy that scores goals in an offensive-based system. And I think, again, they definitely took discounts there. But, it's very hard, again, to judge players based on their money and their stats. Look at Barzal. No 15-goal scorer is getting what he got. No 44 assist guy. No 59, 73 games. That's not happening on any other team. But the Islanders find ways, to give those guys that money. And yes, loyalty, but also they have a certain system they play, and they have players they feel comfortable that could help that system. Now, I'm not saying they hit it on every shot because they didn't. I think there was a lot more value and money put into the fourth line, and they dealt with injuries and they were older. But when they were on top of their game in the system in place, they led by example. They were on the ice for every time the Islanders gave up a goal. They stirred the pot. They got underneath the opponent's skin. They provided offense. I mean, Seekers had a season where he scored goals, and he capitalized on that and got a contract out of that, a long-term deal. So I think you base the money. It's very hard to just look at the money, especially when you're looking at players in this system, because on other teams, those guys might not be even playing NHL goals. So I think it comes down to the system in place, and that's why, the loyalty might look like a negative. And again, it very well could be, and we'll see what plays out, especially over the length of Barzal's deal, because I try to make this point. I think I make it to a lot of people is that I'm not all is Backstrom, but as Backstrom needs an Ovechkin. Without Ovechkin, Backstrom is a playmaker that has a guy that doesn't finish. With Ovechkin, then a guy that finishes. That's Backstrom and Ovechkin are a dynamic duo because Backstrom has the skills that Barzal has. Now, again, we get into it. Barzal is the craziest skater I think all of us have ever seen. His edge work is unreal. If you put him with a guy like Ovechkin, then Barzal is worth 10, 11 million because not only is he going to rack up assists, all the eyes are going to be on Ovechkin and not him. So he's going to get a chance to score where, like, he'll have a lane to shoot because they are taking away the lane from Ovechkin. Right now with Barzal, it's all eyes were on him. And when he passed the puck off, go back to the Everly days, they did have great connections, but there were a lot of times where Barzal would feed the puck to Everly wide open, and Everly wouldn't score. And you look at Barzal, like, okay, Barzal is playing with these guys, setting up these players, and they're not putting the puck in that, which is why I think so many fans, they've been waiting for a prolific goal scorer, because Barzal with a prolific scorer becomes the backstrom to an Ovechkin.
Yep.
The Islanders don't have an Ovechkin, and I think, can Palmieri be an Ovechkin? Like, again, no one's Ovechkin, but Barzal doesn't have to be a superstar. I think people also get the misconception. If they brought Gaudreau in, Gaudreau wasn't going to skate with Barzal. They're too similar. You couldn't play them together. As much as Gaudreau was a scorer, Gaudreau was a skater, a playmaker as well. Yes, he has more offensive upside in terms of scoring goals and what he could do, but those are two guys that are very similar. I don't think it would have worked. Now, a guy like Kadri, Barzal probably gets moved to the wing, given his face. He doesn't take faceoffs anyway. But if Barzal goes to the wing, he's got to shoot the puck more. So I think the Islanders desperately need an Ovechkin to a backstrom type situation. And I do believe that there's value in a guy like Wahlstrom, that he could be the sniper the Islanders need. But for now, it's going to be a guy like Palmieri. And again, no one can really be as snake-bitten as Palmieri was last year. Like I said, he wasn't great in the first half, but he was doing a lot of the right things and just wasn't scoring. And again, he's getting paid. He's got a 4-year deal. It's his job to score goals, and he didn't live up to the job description there. But if Barzal is setting him up this year, and Palmieri looks very healthy, looks energized, looks focused, he looks very strong at camp. Parise spoke about it as well. It's a big year for him because he came over. He didn't do anything before the playoffs began. Then he was a big player in the playoffs, and then did nothing to start last year. Looked better in the second half, as did many. But the Islanders need the Palmieri they saw in the postseason. The guy that, this guy was a top player with the Ducks when he first broke in, fourth liner, but he worked his way to a top line on a talented Ducks team because he had the potential and the ability to put the puck in the net. And it's not about superstar player with Barzal. It's finding the right player. If the right player was Bailey, I'm just using him as an example. If Bailey was potting the pucks in the back of the net at an alarming rate and it was working with Barzal, it doesn't matter if they don't have a legitimate superstar winger for him. It's about who works and understands. Again, Parise is not an elite superstar player anymore, but he understands how Barzal plays, and that's a line, and that's a duo that could have great chemistry. Parise is not a superstar anymore. He's a guy that understands Barzal, and I think for the Islanders, it's not about the superstar. It's about a guy that understands what he can do with Barzal. And if Wahlstrom could be that guy, which I think management is banking on, okay, once Wahlstrom figures out in the system and understands, like, hey, I get the puck, I shoot, I score, you have Barzal and Wahlstrom, that could be your dynamic duo. But again, we have to see more from Wahlstrom at a consistent rate.
What the reason I was bringing that up too about loyalty is because I think, right, I could make the argument if the loyalty resulted in players from, let's say, outside the organization, right, still valuing, right, he's got such a fantastic reputation that talented player Johnny Smith, I want to go play for Lou Lamoriello because he's so loyal. It's genuine. It's something that's fresh. It's refreshing. I want to come and join, right? This is a team. The Islanders are a team that have the core they've had is pretty much what they've had since before Lou Lamoriello. Lou Lamoriello did not build this team. This was a Garth Snow-built team. Lou Lamoriello has kept them together. And again, we mentioned it, the best thing he's done was bringing in Barry Trotz. We have first-time head coach here. And, sometimes you need those outside influences, right? We've seen how loyalty has negatively affected us. I just don't think the loyalty has positively affected us as much as maybe, we look at it. I think it's been more of a hindrance than anything else. And, that's my opinion on it. And, again, like I kind of want to also talk a little bit about, you had mentioned with Kadri there, you said earlier on that Lou Lamoriello was in serious talks and legitimate talks with Nazem Kadri. Now, that scares me. You know what I mean? Like, we played it up and I said, if he were to legitimately sign Nazem Kadri, this would be more of doubling down on aged veterans and continuing to put that last freaking nail in the coffin to sink the rest of this ship for a long-term rebuild. I'm happy, obviously, things didn't work. Thank God Lou Lamoriello wanted to use every single available second that offseason, because if not, it sounds like, hey, Nazem Kadri could have been a very realistic signing for us, and I'm happy we didn't do that. Again, like I mentioned, the thing that makes me positive about this year is we could still play no matter what happens, whether we struggle, which could very well be the possibility with the team, again, that has not improved their forward group, has players that are, in their early to mid 30s that are just rife on the forward group. What are they going to produce? Do they all have magical bounce back seasons in their 30, or do they continue to perform on the same pace, or maybe a little less, because the older they get, They age like vinegar and not wine, as Grumpy always says. But the thing that's scary is if he was legitimately thinking about having Nazem Kadri as a piece of that team, that would think he's still all in for this window. And I worry about if we're, let's say, on the outside looking in at the deadline, Lou doubles down. That scares me a bit.
Yeah, so when the Kadri talk started heating up, before information was coming out, from my end about what was actually going down and happening, I wrote an article and said, Kadri's the best player available, but is he the right player? And my answer was no. I did a column for NY Hockey Now, and I said, listen, you look at Kadri and what he did. You got to look at the situations. Kadri had a career year on a Stanley Cup winning team that has probably, besides maybe you look at Tampa, but unreal defense, unreal forward group, where the top defensemen weren't going against him every night. Let's be fair, they weren't. He dominated. He came up clutch in big moments. He's a fierce competitor that, of course, everybody, it's like a Tom Wilson. You hate him when you're playing it with, you hate him when you're playing against him, but you love him on your team. That's what Kadri, I think he had that battle mentality that Lou really wanted. But I thought bringing him on made too many things have to happen for it to actually work out. You're moving somebody off center. And as much as people said, okay, Barzal struggled in the faceoff dot, take him off center. It's not easy to just transition to the wing, especially when you're not a guy that shoots. Barzal going to the wing would mean you have to shoot more. Nelson has played the wing before, but he's strong in the faceoff dot. And Kadri was solid. He wasn't, over 50%, I think, career-wise. But again, you look at speed of the game. Kadri's a solid player, but that contract, like most contracts, especially when they're 30 and up, wasn't going to age well. Now, if they won a cup in the first couple of years, it doesn't matter because that's your goal. Your goal is to win a championship, and if you do that and the contract stings at the end, so be it. You got the job done. But I think Kadri would have made more questions than answers, and I think them avoiding him, for whatever reason why they avoided him, if it didn't work out on his end or their end, I kind of think they dodged a bullet.
Yeah, but it brings back the worry of it's like the freaking madman at the helm, right? I was just starting to feel, maybe those premonition, those thoughts I have of a guy who, trades away Devontae's for pennies and he continues to sign players that are aged on the wrong side, aren't necessarily what we need. Again, middle six guys, we pay them to long-term deals in their 30s. That is nothing to worry about because what I've seen here and his ability to re-sign back restricted free agents, I would argue at below market deals, was fantastic. Gives me a little bit of maybe I was wrong with my assumption. If he was legitimately still in, wanted him, I still worry that this is a guy who is not afraid to throw every single last asset we have towards this team's future. Again, continuing for this very, very small window, if it is even opened. I mean, Grump and I have had the conversation ad nauseum all off season long, as it was very quiet on the Islanders front. Is the window open? Is it closed? I think we both side towards probably closed, solely because we look at those teams and we see those playoff caliber teams. Did it look like the Islanders were on the same stratosphere of the Colorado Avalanche? I'd say no. Did it look like we were on the same planet of even a banged up, beaten up Tampa Bay Lightning and all those teams that were competing over there late in the playoffs? I would say we were in a different class and not in the good variety. I think that the window has closed unless, we're able to somehow add one of those bona fide top line guys that can help provide offense. The defense and the goaltending is something I don't worry about at all. I know Romanov has struggled with Dobson. I'm not worried at all about him picking up the system. I'm not worried at all about what our top four is going to do and our goaltending. I think that is, with the combination, probably the top four and a goaltender, we might be number one in that category just because, again, the strong, steady Eddie defenseman. I think Sorokin's a top 5 goalie when he's on his game.
Sorokin very well is I personally, with him, again, I'm in awe of him and Shesterkin, just again from a goalie standpoint, watching these guys play. They might not be statistically the best goalies in the league. I know Shesterkin was, but watching them play, these Russian goalies with the biggest thing for me is their anticipation. I mean, wraparound chances, odd man rush chances, shots from the slot. They're in the position before the pass even comes. And again, that has its downfall. And I think that's something that Shesterkin struggled with early when he first came up, making ridiculous saves, but he's allowing those soft goals. And as he's played more NHL games, those soft goals went away, and he wins a Vezina. Sorokin last year, there were points where he was making these ridiculous saves, but those soft goals were going in. So another year under their belt, I think that anticipation, you're understanding the NHL game. I think Sorokin could very well finish top 2. He could be the best goalie in the league this upcoming year again. It's going to come down to, though, it's not just about him. It's about the defense in front of him. You look at the Rangers, and Shesterkin's season was so crazy because the defense in front of him had games where they just left Sorokin out to dry, and he answered the call. And I think for Sorokin, in a system that works, that allows him to be at his best. And you could see Sorokin be a number 1, number 2 in the league this year, just for he's got the skill sets to be a number 1 guy. And Vasilevsky, I don't think is going to be at the top for that much longer. With you got Shesterkin and Sorokin right there. I very well think that Sorokin could be the best goalie, if not one of the best goalies in the league.
Well, let me ask you too, just so I kind of get your understanding of what your opinions are here for this team and for this season.
Watch out, Stefan. He's going to hold you to something you just said.
It's all good. It's all good. I'll just delete it.
No. But I mean, like, I believe with the top 4 and the defensemen, I think you could say top. I think you can make an argument for the best in the NHL, if not top 3. I think the goalie, again, as you mentioned, top 5, and I think our defensive pairings are fantastic. They're solidified. I'm not worried about early struggles with them. The forward group still is always the consistent, the pain point that we have. We've never struggled, and here's the thing too: we've never struggled under Barry Trotz to defend, even with the anchors of Chara and Green.
Yeah, the defense was statistically still solid last year. Compared to other teams.
I was about to say, compared amongst the league, it was okay. It wasn't what our expectation was, and what we've seen in the past. But relative to what we see across the league, it was still well above average on that side. And I think that we're going to be a better defensive team this year. I want to ask a little bit about what you think with this window, and do you think, hey, the window has closed, or how much of the window is open if you believe there's still a chance for us to make the playoffs or win a cup?
Yeah, so I'm not going to say the window is closed. I never count any team out. Again, it's very hard to look at last year and say, okay, their window's closed, because last year was a shitstorm. I mean, that's all you could put it. Everything that could go wrong did. Now, in terms of a window, it's going to come down to your young guys in your lineup. If Bellows and Wallstrom don't take steps forward, and you're relying on your guys that are getting older to continue to get older, and you're not getting any youth into the lineup, then your window closes pretty quickly. But if Bellows and Wallstrom come in and find ways to be consistent, legitimate goal scorers, that keeps your window open a little bit. Yes, guys are getting older. Your defense isn't that old. Again, you have a pair of 22-year-olds as your second pairing. Mayfield's 29. He might be on his way out, but Salo, it's 23. You got guys like Barzal, Beauvillier, Wallstrom, Bellows. Your fourth line's older. But again, Bellows could play in the fourth line if you need be. You have, Brock Nelson and Lee are older, but it's going to come down to the youth that comes into the lineup, because if the youth can't, and especially the prospects, if guys like Rotzi and Holmstrom and Dufour and other guys don't develop, your window's closed, because every year passes, you need young guys to come in. You look at the NHL, Grumpy, you said it before. It's just comes down to, this is a speed and skill league in the regular season.
Yep.
The playoffs is not the same league. The playoffs is grit and defense and goaltending, and it's just, you have to be shut down hockey, and that's why the Islanders had so much success. Their regular seasons weren't successful. They barely got in, and they got in by rules because of COVID. But when they got to the postseason, they were ready. And yes, what came down at the end of it was their offense. And it wasn't the offensive, chances. It was, they got the chances. They just, when you needed that big goal, it didn't happen. So I think if you get the youth, and especially guys like Bells and Wilson, if they can find a way to be steady, everyday players and maybe push some of these veterans out, your window stays open. But if your young guys don't take steps in the NHL level and AHL level, each year or each month that goes by where the team doesn't improve or get those goals, your window closes. But I would say after this year, if the team doesn't make the playoffs by a long shot, like I said before, you probably blow this thing up. But if you get youth to step up and you see players produce at the AHL level, that does keep your window open. And if they go to the NHL level, that's great, and they perform, then your window's open. But if it's going to be the same thing where veterans aren't coming through and the prospects and the young players aren't either, your window closes rather quickly. And very well could be closed if those prospects don't get it done. Because again, like Grumpy said, it's a league based on young speed and skill, and the Islanders lack that at the NHL level with their prospect pool and with just getting chances. Also, Trotz, Wallstrom was benched and pulled mid-games and didn't get the chances. Not saying he deserved it. He really struggled in the system. It's allowing these young guys to play. And again, the Islanders don't have much leeway to try things. But if Wallstrom has a bad shift and you bench him, he doesn't really get the chance to learn, because now he's, I remember a game after he got benched last year, he played in Montreal, and every time he touched the puck, very nervous. and you don't want nervous players out there. You want players to understand, hey, it's okay if I make one mistake. I need to learn from that mistake. And if you don't learn from the mistake, then yeah, you'll get benched, so you won't play. But I think if you're going to give out long leashes to veterans, your young players have to have the chance to learn from their mistakes in the moment.
Thank you very much.
It can't be, because again, watching from the press box is great. That's a great way to learn. But the only way to learn is by playing. And that's where you're talking about Romanov and Dobson are playing all these preseason games because Lambert values that, hey, the only way they're going to really learn how to play with each other is in game-like situations. You can't mimic that. Same way as goaltenders, like Varlamov even said. He goes, I didn't get to play in situations. I could practice all I want in the preseason and in training camp. Until I play in an actual game, everything changes. So I think young guys have to be given the chance to learn on the fly because they're not learning from the press box. We saw it last year. Besides Bellows improved, but Wallstrom never got it. And I think if Wallstrom messes up, the best thing for him and his confidence is to throw him back out there. And if I mess up again, then sure. But at least give him that chance to, okay, I messed up and did this wrong on that last shift. Let me show you that I can improve on the fly. And again, if they don't, you do what you got to do. You bench the players. That's how they're going to learn it. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it does. But the quicker you put in any job, if you're a rookie or an intern and you mess up once and you're fired, one, your confidence is gone, and two, you didn't learn from that mistake because you weren't given the chance to correct it. So I think it's important for Lane. We'll see what happens. That if youngsters do make mistakes in games, you don't have to play a lot in the game, but you have to at least give them a chance to bounce back and prove to you that that was just one mistake and they're better than that.
Right. For me, every player makes mistakes every game. And an issue with Barry Trotz was veterans could make mistakes over and over and over again, the same ones. And he just says, well, you know what? I trust them. But a young guy gets a mistake and he gets benched. And I'm 100%. I'm glad you agreed with that because I'm 100%. You have to let the young guys play through mistakes because their upside is greater, particularly on this team of the veterans. You got guys who are all in their 30s. They're going to be regressing, right? Yeah. Historically, you're in your 30s. I mean, your play tails off unless you're truly elite. Now, only one thing I want to disagree with you. You said that Barzal could not have played with Gaudreau. The Sedin brothers.
I'm not saying you couldn't. I just think they're two similar players where it might have made more sense to balance the offense by having them on two different lines.
Okay, I'm going to say the Sedin brothers, same. They were exactly the same. Neither one of them wanted to shoot Daniel a little bit more, and that could have been. But look what they did. They turned Anson Carter and Alex Burrows into,
all-star caliber
incredible,
players.
almost all-star caliber players. And then you'd see somebody like a Palmieri or a Wallstrom or a Bellows. They're just cleaning up because everyone's chasing those two guys in their passing skills, and it leaves that sniper open to score goals.
Yeah, and I'll back off that. It all depends on that other guy.
Yes.
Like if Gaudreau played with Barzal and they were the two guys doing things, but you didn't have a guy bearing those chances, that line doesn't work because you need all three players to click. That's why I said it's such a huge year for Palmieri because you could have Gaudreau and Barzal doing what they got to do, but that third guy's got to contribute. So I think I agree with you. The Sedins made the other player, like an Alex Burrows, a legitimate goal scorer. But again, he was a guy that understood what he had to do.
And here's the thing. As much as I bag on Palmieri, he was better than Anson Carter and Alex Burrows.
Palmieri is a legitimate sniper in this league, and he's proven it. And I think he just has to get back to the confidence one. I think the confidence for many players was shattered in the first half, and they overcame it in the second half. But by that point, it was a lost season. It was too late. So I think off the bat, Palmieri could pot a couple of goals early in the season. That's going to do wonders for his confidence and the line because he knows what he has to do on that line when he's playing with a guy like Parise and Barzal.
I don't know if you could tell, but I wanted Gaudreau here in the offseason.
I think everybody did. Again, even if you didn't play with Barzal, which he could have, that still makes your team better. It's not like him bringing you. Again, he's also a winger. You weren't making people move positions and things like that. He definitely would have helped this team, no doubt. Again, he's much better option than Kadri. I think JT Miller would have been a perfect fit. I thought Pacioretty before he got hurt. Obviously, maybe Vegas knew something that the Carolina Hurricanes didn't, but for nothing, essentially, because he's a captain. A guy that just gets the puck and shoots is a perfect player to play with Barzal because he knows what he has to do. So I think guys like that, like a JT Miller, I would stay away from Hoffman. I know a couple years ago fans wanted him. Again, a guy that can score, defensive liability, and you're in a defensive system where you have to have every guy on the line play some sort of defense, and Hoffman didn't do that.
And you got to worry about his wife,
causing issues in the locker room.
About any of the other married ladies on the team. That's not good.
Well, I wanted to go back because I've got a few more items that you had spoken about earlier. Chris Lamoriello somehow finding a way to usurp that role as a general manager, to take that by force. Now that caused an apoplectic response from Grumpy and I. Not something that we're a fan of. Now,
I don't think it would happen. If Lou left, and again, I don't think Lou would ever get fired, if I'll be quite honest. I think ownership loves him. But I do think that if, again, this is just opinion, nothing going on here, that if the Islanders had to blow this thing up, does Lou at 80 want to be part of a team that does he want to do that work? Because that's a lot of work. And I think if Lou was fired, obviously his son wouldn't remain. They'd redo all of that. But if Lou were to leave on his own terms, I don't think his son would stay. And I think if you're going to get rid of Lamoriello, you're getting rid of that whole entire group, and you're probably getting rid of the coach. It's probably whoever comes in is bringing what they want in here. And I think what the Islanders should do, if Lou decides, like, hey, this will be my last year, whatever it is, and again, we'll never know that. But as you bring someone on as an advisor that you train to take over your job, like I said, Chris Lamoriello is only the AHL general manager because his dad's there. Like, he wasn't going to just be there on his own. His dad had lead with that. Not saying Chris hasn't done a great job. I mean, he's an AL GM. He's not really making trades and doing that kind of stuff. He's pretty much just monitoring what's going on down there and maybe traveling to NHL games when his dad doesn't want to travel, whatever it may be. But I think if Lou were to leave the organization, Lamoriello would go. I'm just not going to rule it off the table because, again, I don't know. I'm not privy to that information, but I think it would be smart if Lou decides, hey, this will be my last year. You bring on, look at Colorado. Their assistant GM, McFarland, took over now from Sakic as now the GM, and Sakic's now in charge, the advisor, or whatever you want to call his exact role. We could see Lou also do that, where he steps away as the general manager and becomes that guy that oversees and helps. And I think that would be huge for transitioning because, again, like Barry Trotz to Lane, now we don't know exactly how that went down, but if Trotz did have a say in this, which he could have, said, listen, I can't 100% commit to this. Lane is a damn good coach. It makes sense for you guys to bring him on and go from that. I think it'd be really smart for Lou to have that plan, for the organization to have that plan, where you go from a Hall of Fame general manager to a guy that now is trained and understands the game, rather than just bringing in someone who doesn't know what's going on. Because it's a whole culture change too. I mean, the Islanders is a special culture here, and you want people that are coming in who understand it.
Yeah, see, for me, what we've been talking about is they should have brought in an understudy GM last year, certainly this year. Let him learn under Lamoriello. Once his contract is up at the end of this year, kick him upstairs. This guy's ready to hit the ground running with some of his own ideas, but this way he learns everything. I just think they've kind of been a little bit late to the party to that. I mean, because he is in his 80s now. I mean,
he's turning 80. Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, for an 80-year-old, he's got his wits about him. But as an NHL GM, it's a young person's game now. It's like I said, it's not like the 90s where all you had to worry about was you could hardball guys for what money you were going to give them. But with the salary cap and free agency, I just think that maybe the game has passed them by a little bit in that regard.
But yeah, I agree. The special bringing in someone to train, I think every organization in sports should do that. Every job, everything in life, you should have someone coming in that's prepared and understands his role, rather than someone who's brand new. You see in jobs all the time where a new boss comes in, doesn't understand the culture there. People don't like him off the bat initially. There's fights. There's things that don't work out. They come in and they fire everyone and bring on their own staff. You could have a guy that's settled in, could take over a job peacefully, that understands the players, the system, the coach. The coach probably stays if that GM is comfortable and learns how because the biggest reason why coaches are fired is because a guy comes in and he wants to do his own thing. If you're bringing a guy in that's saying, okay, this is how things run here. Oh, okay, I understand the coach. They don't know the coach when they come in. They want their guys they know. If they come in and know the coach and know the system and know the players, it makes for an easy transition. It makes for a better chance of success because trying new things. Again, it's a first-year coach in Lambert, but the new voice, it's not a new voice. It's a guy that's been here that understands. And I think that's huge because, you bring another coach, he might say, enough with the defensive system. We're going full offense. Well, the Islanders don't have the players to run a full offensive system. That's not how they're built. Even if they have players like that, they're all been so geared for the couple of years since Trotz 2018. Hey, defense first. Got to think the defensive game. If they went to a completely offensive system, which is what fans wanted, it would be a mess. So I think bringing in someone who understands like the strengths and weaknesses of the team and how things operate is critical.
Right. And
I got a few things, Grumpy, because
I'm sorry. And that's been my issue is we don't have the players in the whole organization who could do run and gun. So
Agree.
you're gonna have to transition to that. Eventually, you're gonna have to transition that game because just the way the game is played now. I'm sorry, PJ. Go ahead.
I wanted to bring up 2 points because before we move too far away from Lou, you said you don't ever think, because we're still on the topic, you don't ever think he'll ever be fired or asked to leave, asked to step away. You think he'd always be. They're not the first person who said this, and this is why it's always worrisome when I hear these type of items where it's like he's got a lifetime job. As long as he wants it, the job is. You're not the first person, so I think there's definitely validity behind that statement. That being said, when we're looking for the case of what Lou's done, we've talked about done many positives. I think he's run his course. I think, again, like when you talk about, hey, did a fantastic job appointing a head coach, did a fantastic job of getting Sorokin, right? Without Lou Lamoriello, without Barry Trotz, we never would have brought Sorokin over here. Never in a million years. So he brought legitimacy back to the team. He got us, again, a Vezina caliber goalie here via the addition that, he probably would not have come over here under regard Snow or the regime that was there at the moment. And he's done a very good job of, re-signing back restricted free agents. When I look at his ability to sell off assets and to acquire assets that are from outside the team, I think he has done a lackluster job at best. And if we're in a situation where at the trade deadline, let's say, hey, we're not in the playoff picture, I don't want him on the buttons or controlling who gets sold, because I've seen him get taken advantage of before in the past, and I don't want to see that happen again. I think that every single time he sells or buys players, he is always overpaying or getting underpaid, depending on the situation. He never wins in those situations. I don't want him to have the control over that, and I think that the way it sounds, we could see Lou until he wants to leave.
TJ.
Yeah. So of course, sorry, 1 second. Of course, if they win, like, if they're really bad this year, right? Yeah, maybe the ownership, but you look at the way ownership, views Lou. I mean, again, they brought, like you just said, he turned the franchise around, and they're incredibly grateful for that. And I think that might blind them at some points where they say, okay, other organization, their owner might say, oh, you had a bad year last year, we give you this year, and you had a bad year this year, you're out. But for what he's done for the organization, again, comes down to it again, loyalty. There's a loyalty to Lou because of what he's done and how he's changed the culture here. And, he got UBS built. He got all these things done that pretty much changed the complete outlook of this organization. There's loyalty there. Again, if they were horrendous this year and things went really south, you got to look at him because he said, I trust this group. And if the group doesn't play to the level they need to and they don't make the playoffs, well, how much longer can you trust that group without having to blow it up? So I think, again, of course, they can get fired. I just don't see, if they barely make the playoffs or if they're close to it at the deadline or things like that. Yeah, I don't think Lou would be out of a job. But I will say there's a way you could say he could be on. I mean, I think everybody's on the hot seat. Let me just say that everyone's on the hot seat this year. Just from this is the biggest year to prove, can this system play in 82 games? Can these players that struggled last year bounce back? And if that doesn't happen, that falls on the players, of course, but then it also falls back on Lou for trusting his players. Not saying he shouldn't trust them. They showed you that they can get to the playoffs and do damage. Like you said, it's a group effort, but usually when players don't play well, the coach goes and the GM goes. So we'll see what happens.
And TJ, so let me just get this clear. You want to have like a fail safe, like for nuclear weapons. 2 guys have to turn their keys at the same time. You don't want it where Lou can just press the button. Like
exactly.
Like Martin Sheen did in the dead zone. You don't want that where he could just, General, the missiles are flying. Hallelujah. You don't want anything like that. Correct.
Correct. I don't want to see that. We'd have to have like the guy who shoots the baby or shoots the kid or pretends to shoot the kid and he's got to hold up the baby to protect himself and he loses the election. We need something like that. A moment like that, Grumpy, of clarity for the fan. Now, the thing that I've always had.
That was a really good movie, by the way.
It was. The thing that I always worry about, as I mentioned earlier, again, him having control to trade away assets. I think you cannot be in a situation, no matter where you are at the trade deadline, you cannot sit and stand still. I don't give a shit if we're on the outside looking in. If you're making a hard push to make it, fantastic, do it. I don't think you should. If we're in that spot, oh my God, we'll be losing our mind. But if you're on the outside, if you're far on the outside and you're selling off, let's say, you just cannot sit still. We did nothing last year at the trade deadline. You have valuable assets you could trade away, like Varlamov, Mayfield this year on those expiring deals. You can hold back 50% cap hit. It's not really going to matter too much for Mayfield, but maybe for Varlamov, it makes him more enticing to another team. The issue I would have is if we stand still or we don't go ahead and make those moves. we would get nothing for valuable assets that we can get something for. That's the thing that always bothered me with John Tavares. I know not trying to change the topics, not trying to change the topic. When you have an asset and you do not get your rightful price when you lose him, I looked at it as a complete and utter failure by the general manager. Fireable offense. Your job as a general manager of the franchise is to make sure the assets you have on and off the ice, you get the most value out of them. And again, like for that, right? That's why I look at the Devontae's gets a little bit of ding. I understand the situation it was in, but like the handling of assets has always bothered me with Lou. And I think that if we are not in the playoff picture this year, if we're let's say even close, I feel like we're going to double down, and it's throwing good money after bad at the table, at the poker table. That's what I worry about.
Stefan, do you worry? Do you see he gets a little worked up? He knows how calm and cool he is most of the time, and then all of a sudden he starts talking about John Tavares. All of a sudden he starts getting like this. So just watch out. Watch what you say to him now.
Oh, I want to hear honest answers.
Oh yeah, if they are out of it at the deadline, first off, you have to make moves. You're in a world where cap space is a needed asset. We saw it. We saw it this year. Cap space, the Islanders didn't get players that, fans wanted, whether Lou wanted them or not, because they couldn't keep up with the price tag. And I think in August of the summer, I know you said, Grubby, they had the money, but they made internal moves that limited that ability. Not trading Varlamov. That's a big one. If they thought,
just to touch on your point, they had that scenario last year and they didn't do that. When they should have. They should have.
Yeah. And I think that if they are out of it, like you said, do they trade a guy like Varlamov? I mean, if you're going to lose him anyway, and even if he's going to come back, if they're completely out of it, then yeah, you trade Varlamov, because at the deadline, first off, teams will overpay because they need to. There'll be injuries. I think the goalie market last year, there was chances. And from an outside source, I had heard that there were trades in place for Varlamov to go to a Canadian team for a first.
Yeah.
The problem is that Varlamov had a 16-team no movement clause, and as his right from the contract we gave him, he did not waive that, and you have to respect that because that's his role. Varlamov wanted to stay here, but the belief that Lou didn't want to trade Varlamov or whatever, there was a deal lined up. It didn't come to fruition, but I think again he still has a 16 no trade list. But I think this deadline, if the Islanders are out of it, you have no choice but to move because you need cap space. You saw what happened this summer, like you said, but you need to use the cap space you create. It's useless if you don't use it. And I think that by the Islanders not signing players this offseason, they kept some cap space that they could use at the deadline. Again, even bringing on cap, taking draft picks on. We see teams that are pretty bad, like Coyotes. They're not a good team at all. But what they do is they have draft capital and they bring on money. They get the things they need to do, and then we'll see if the only way that Coyotes are going to get better though is if they use that. They set that whole plan up, and if they don't use that, then it's all for nothing. So I think if the Islanders are out of it, you're going to see players on expiring contracts get moved because Lou has no choice. If you don't do that, you're just putting the Islanders in a terrible situation for the future. Now, if they're close to it, and the offense isn't having an uptick in performance, and they need that guy, you're at a point where, again, this is a season where you need to get something done. First off, you have to be back in the playoffs, no question about it, or things have to change. And I think that you need to go get, if that score is available and you have the cap space that you created, or you have to bring a guy in and you have to part ways with prospects, you're in win now mode. Again, prospects are merely prospects. People talk a lot about the draft and analyzing draft pools and prospect pools. They mean nothing. They mean nothing because if you have, besides a top 5-10 pick in the draft, you have no idea what you're getting. A fifth round pick could be a better player than the guy that was taken 20th overall. So trading prospects to get players that are proven to win now, that you already know could be guys that change franchises, you have to pull the trigger because that prospect you're holding on to, one might never be that guy that you could have gotten. I think for the Islanders, like you said, if they can't, let's say Wallstrom or Palmieri don't prove they can play with Barzal, and there's a player at the draft who's going to cost a first round pick, a top prospect. Well, the Islanders, like you said, their window is closing. You need to go and pull the trigger. You have to.
Statistically speaking, it's like over 60% of all NHL players are ex-first round picks. If you trade, let's say hypothetically, you're on the outside looking in, you say, hey, we think that a guy, St. Louis is on the outside looking in too, and they want to get rid of Tarasenko on an expiring deal. Who could they offload him to? Hey, highest bidder, come around. And the Islanders say, we're the highest bidder. We throw a first. This will be the fourth year in a row we're trading away that first round pick in a very, very deep draft this season. That's I don't know. It's like when we talk about being the reckless abandonment towards the team's future. I think I'm not sure Lou's a guardian of the future of the team because I think we all know what he's here for. He's here to win a cup. He came here for the short term. Lou has a short lifespan and a short finite span here with the Islanders left. I mean, he's not going to be here for another 10, 15 years as a general manager, or he can't even dream in a situation like that. But I mean, he's trying to win the cup, and what I worry is he's going to say, just like this year, I firmly believe, because I think you're in the pool of there's a lot of reasons last year as to why we struggled. And again, I think a lot of those have to do a lot with excuses. I think a lot of teams experience the same or very similar obstacles that we did.
And you talk to the players, they say that we could tell you everything that went wrong. There's no excuse for that. We didn't play. At the end of the day, we didn't play well enough. They don't care what went wrong. That's their mindset. And it's a great mindset to have, because if you get a team that just says excuse after excuse, there's no accountability. This group has accountability for last year. They know that regardless of what happened, nobody was good enough, and that's why they didn't make the playoffs. Not because of the road trip, not because of COVID. They didn't play well enough when it mattered, and that's why they didn't make the postseason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, like I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But I think that I think they'll say that, but they say, hey, we're not using excuses. We're not using X, Y, and Z. They'll introduce the items, but they'll say we're not going to use them. And the same token, introducing that into the mindset. And then you'd have the people, Shannon and Butch, and the media team, the PR guys are like, oh yeah, I mean that happened, and this it's a little different. It's
easy. It's easy to blame to go that route. It is very easy. And you brought up the draft and not getting rid of the first round pick again. And the way I look at it again, prospects are very important. Don't get me wrong, especially like Grumpy said, is that this is a speed skill league. Yeah. And the prospects coming out now are speed skill. You're not really getting prospects that are those gritty old fashioned guys, because one, that's not how you get paid. Everybody's not making money. It doesn't matter if it's, NHL doesn't make enough money like the MLB or out of the leagues, but you bring guys are learning from players when they're young. People are watching Austin Matthews going, okay, I need to work on my shot and my skating and all those kinds of things. I'll work on the defense when I can, but those are the guys that get paid. Those are the guys that get the fan support. But I think for prospects is, if you're a team that is ready to win now and you think you're going to be a top team and go on runs in postseason, if you're going to be a late first round pick, again, this is just my opinion and it's not a guarantee. If you're going to be a late first round pick, essentially you're looking at it's a second. Again, that's just my mindset. If you really believe your team's going to go deep, but the question becomes when you bank on that and it doesn't happen and you get rid of that pick and it turned into a top 10 pick and you didn't win, then of course it's a bad move, but that's, you can't look back like that.
I have no problem at all trading away picks when we were legit. I believe the team as structured could win or had a legitimate chance to win in shortened seasons. We saw firsthand under Trott's system that, hey, on an 82-game season, the aged veterans on this team cannot keep at the pace needed and required in order to be successful in the regular season. I think, the postseason is a totally different animal, right? We all understand that experience matters. Things completely change. That being said, we've agreed here. Do not expect something cut from a different cloth. I tried to use an analogy. I screwed it up yesterday. It's not like we're talking about. It's not like, hey, Lane Lambert's going to be felt, and Barry Trotz was like, he was like silk. It wasn't going to be like. They're going to be very, very similar cuts of cloth.
Oh yeah,
and
you're going to see the same system with a little more aggressiveness. That's it.
That's the point. We're going to be seeing a very similar system. What makes us think, after they weren't able to execute the Barry Trotz system over an 82-game season, that now under Lane Lambert's system, that's going to be very similar, we're going to be able to have the gusto, the energy, the aggression to fight for every single inch on that ice. We were able to do it in shortened seasons with an older group. We've got an older group with another year older and another 82-game season ahead. What makes us think that we're going to be able to do that better this year?
That's the concern. And what I will say is you're seeing a lot, the Islanders, especially early in the preseason, struggle with the system. And while that's a negative, you kind of look at it as a positive because that means there's differences. And I think that's a good way to look at it because, again, if it was the same system, this team wouldn't be struggling preseason to understand it. They know it. They played for since 2018. They should have it down to the wire. So the fact that we're seeing a lot of players struggling early to understand the system, that means there are changes. So, again, I'm not saying this team's going to score 4 goals or get 40 shots on goal. But it's going to be, again, it's still going to be defensive-minded for sure, a little more aggressiveness. But there are clear differences, which is why I think this team is struggling early on. And I think that's I think that's a positive if you're looking at it trying to be different.
For me,
That's really quickly, Grum. That is something I hadn't really thought of. That's a good way and a take on it, right? That's why you check out NYI Hockey Now. That's why you check out the Back Check podcast. These are the reasons why, right? You'll always hear some people speak in the echo chamber. We speak in our area.
echo chamber.
That's echo. No, echo chamber, Grumpy.
It's not eco, it's echo.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, echo chamber. But you know, you look at some of those. That's why you check them out at NYI Hockey. Now, I hadn't thought of that.
Sure.
I do appreciate. I do like that thought. I'm sorry, Grumpy.
Now,
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to.
All I'm going to say is this is the same way we looked last preseason as well. And it was a concern for me last preseason. I'm like, we don't look the same. We look like we're slow. And see, that's my concern is our team speed is not where it needs to be. And if we want to be even more aggressive on a forecheck, I just don't see that happen. Now, one thing you mentioned about Austin Matthews, I would love to see him play for the Islanders, if only for one reason. Get rid of that cheesy mustache because that thing's got to go. I'm sorry. That's the worst. That's the worst mustache I've ever seen.
What do you think of his clothing?
I don't care about that. I can't get past the mustache.
Can you look past that? Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, they struggled last preseason. They aren't a fast team, which is why, again, this is why people wanted a running gun offense. That's not possible.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's why you can't leave a defensive system. But what you can do is give more leeway. You know, let Barzal maybe play more like Barzal can. Have some guys step. Again, do you trust your defense enough to allow for more offense? And I think with the addition of Romanov, the subtraction of two older guys, your defense is a little faster, which means that mistakes that you saw last year where defensemen got caught up at the top of the rink in the offensive zone, they didn't get back. Now we saw in the Flyers game last night, that was a mess, right? But I think you also have the ability to make up for mistakes because you have stronger, faster players in the back end, not necessarily the forward group, which, again, the whole, like I said, transitioning, that is critical. When Pulak went down last year, it took Dobson until December to really find his game. They had no one to transition, which meant no offense because this team is from the defense to the forward group. The defense don't do their job in transition, the offense won't get the chances. So I think because the defense has a little more speed than they did last year, I think that's a difference. But also the system, players say there's not much difference, but you could tell when you see them in practice and learning and their struggles in preseason that there's some things that need to improve upon to get back to that way. And maybe you could say it was just their way the offseason, new players and new roles. But I do think there are differences that the Islanders need to overcome, which I'm going to stick with it until they show on the ice that's a positive, as long as they find a way to learn that system come next week. And it's going to be tough to learn it that quickly.
First 10 games, because we're 100% agreeing with you. We need to start strong.
Yes.
Yeah.
How many points do you feel we need to, out of the first 10 games, how many points do we need to come away with?
It's a really quickly too. It is a tough 10-game stretch as well.
Yeah, it's no easy task.
It's a tough 10-game stretch, but I'm sorry, I'll let you.
We're losing to Florida. That game was a loss.
I always say, and again, it's hard to predict, and I'll put it on the record, but when you start off against tough teams, even the road trip last year, if they came home from the road trip at 500 or over, that even if they were barely over, that's a win. You look at the first 10 games. If they go 6-4 against these tough opponents, or 6-3-1, again, early in the season, if you could get 500 or better in your first 10 games, you're in a great spot because points early in the year are so much easier to get. Not easier, but you look at it as like at the end of the year, no one's 100% healthy. So I think if they could go their first 10 games 6-4, somewhere along those lines, even if it's 5-5, right? They tread water. They came home last year. They started strong on that road trip, and they screwed up at the end, and they got hit COVID and suffered at home. Remember, they're starting on home ice. They start. Let me just check, make sure I get this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 of their first 9 games are on home ice. That is critical because you can't get off to a slow start on home ice. Again, you're in a tough division where you need points. You need points at home. So I think, at the minimum 500. But if they can get momentum at home early. We saw what happened at the Coliseum when the Islanders were going right at home. UBS isn't the Coliseum. It eventually will be. The fan base, again, you had COVID last year, which impacted people coming out to the arena. Now you have a full year with this arena starting on time. Home field advantage is going to be 100% a thing. And if the Islanders could rally around that early and come away, 7-3, 6-4, I think that's a great start to their season, given what they did last year.
Yeah,
We only had 9 wins, I believe. I was trying to pull up the number. I thought we only had 9 wins against playoff caliber teams last year.
see that's the
That's
thing.
always a concern. And we look at the
Yeah.
first quickly. We look at the first few games. We played the Florida Panthers twice. We played the Tampa Bay Lightning. We played the Rangers. We played the Carolina Hurricanes, and we played the Colorado Avalanche. Six games in that first 10 against really top
Well,
tier.
you're going to know right away where the Islanders do stand in terms of not a playoff team, because again, if you beat the bad teams in the NHL, you have a very strong. You have to beat the good teams once in a while, of course, and have dominate against that one year where the Islanders snuck in as the last spot. They beat every bad team and they dominated the Boston Bruins until the last couple of games, and they got in because they dominated the bad teams and they beat one team numerous times. And I think, Florida's scary offensively. They got great goaling, depending which Bobrovsky shows up. Look at their defense, though. It's not as scary as one would think. But again, they have the offense, and during the regular season, if you could pot pucks in the back of the net and have a goalie like Bobrovsky, that's a hard team to beat. But Anaheim, a young team on the rise, you would think you got to beat them. You got to beat them on home ice. Again, because you're playing Florida. San Jose is nothing special right now. They're in rebuild mode. They have veterans, of course, that could, they could be a questionable team, but their goaltending is also a major question mark. The Devils. The Devils are a team that's not quite there, and I don't personally trust their goaltending at all. I think Blackwood.
They can skate.
They can skate. They're young, but you need defense. You need defensive goaltending.
But Hamilton coming back.
That's big.
I mean, that's big for them. And here's the thing. I'm not a Devils guy. I
agree.
I think anytime a Devil gets put on your team, it sets your team back.
I am bullish on the Devils' future, just like I'm bullish on the Red Wings' future. The Devils are going to be one of those teams you're going to have. Okay, you shake your head all you want. The Devils are going to be a team this year. They're going to take big step forwards. Next year, they're going to be
if the Devils had a goaltender like a John Gibson, they're a playoff team because they're so young. But like Detroit's going to, one thing, they went on a stretch where it's like 25 years ago when they made the playoffs. I don't know if that's ever possible again with the cap era. But they're going to be one of those teams that every year you're playoffs because they are so young and so talented. The Devils, I mean, this kid, Jack Hughes, he improves exponentially year after year. Mercer, great. Nico Hischier may not be the best player on the ice, but he's a young leader. They have strong defense. They just need to find that number one goalie. Can Vitek Vanacek be that? We'll see. Again, I don't trust the goalie after 1 year, but we'll see. The Devils, no team in the NHL, that's why I love the NHL, is a bad team can beat a good team on any given night. And that's why I love the league, because the great teams still lose to those bad teams. But the Islanders, though, the Islanders should be better than the Devils this year. That's a fact. The Devils can be really good and improve where they were last year. But again, when you have a schedule like that to start off, if you're going to struggle against those really good teams, you have to beat those teams that are at your level or a little below you. There's just no excuse not to.
I got to say, I was impressed, and I know I keep hitting the same point. The team speed of the Devils in the
even in preseason.
I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, these teams they just skate better than we do. And one thing I disagree with you said you thought Calgary won that Tkachuk trade. I'm in the other park. I think Tkachuk brings a whole different attitude.
I do, but Huberdeau might be the most even though he was up there in points and he got credit, but like he might be the most underrated player, one of the most underrated players in the NHL. And I think Tkachuk with Barkov and Huberdeau, I don't know if they played together for the majority of last year. They did, but not that Barkov can't do it with Tkachuk. He definitely can, but you're separating two guys that worked well together. Again, not saying Tkachuk can't fit in. He probably will, but you never know. When you trade something that works, you never know if you're going to find this. Again, you're talking about a 100-point player that you're trading again. Tkachuk was there too. So it's interesting to see. I just don't trust Florida's defense right now, and I'm blanking on the top of my name what their bottom four look like. But it's not a threat. But again, their offense is a threat. And during the regular season, if you have an offense that's a top 3 offense in the league, your defense can falter. And that's why you look at the postseason. That's when those kinds of teams struggle. Those teams that you can't outscore your opponents every night in the playoffs. It's not possible. But in the regular season, you definitely can. And I think Florida's a team that, of course, they could be a legit team in the regular season. But if their defense doesn't shore up and show that they could be a reliable defense, they're going nowhere. But again, you're talking about regular season because that's all that matters right now.
Go. You have another question, DJ? Because I got a million.
I do. I've got hold on, Grubby. Go ahead and ask yours because I'm adding it up. I had to re-add the numbers. Our record against playoff teams was
abysmal, and that's why we didn't make playoffs. We could not beat teams, playoff caliber teams. Just couldn't. And
I think keep going, sorry.
And for me, it wasn't because of COVID. It wasn't because of we just weren't as good as those other teams. I think, and that's why I'm thinking the age thing is kind of caught up with us. I mean, 75% of our top line of our forward group, maybe it's a little bit different this year depending who starts, is over the age of 30. I mean, and it's not like we have a bunch of super skilled guys. We got one skilled guy in the whole forward group. One guy. Everybody else, I call him Matty and the Jags for a reason, because it's him, and then everybody else is just a guy. Now, I'm not saying that they don't do things well, but they're replaceable. Like touching on what TJ said earlier about, oh, we need this guy, we need that guy. No, like JG Pajot. Love JG Pajot. He's a third line center getting paid $5 million a year. It's too much.
11, 25, and 3 was our record against playoff caliber teams last year. The only teams that we had winning records against was against the Boston Bruins, against the Washington Capitals. Every other team we had a losing record against regarding a playoff caliber team. Like, that was always the biggest concern for me. The good teams, we just looked like we were not on it wasn't like we lost a lot of overtime games either. People like to purport that, oh, well, look how many of these games you lost in overtime, 1-goal games or a shootout caliber game. Out of the games that we had played, we wound up playing 39 games against playoff caliber teams. We're in a spot in a situation where 11, 25, and 3. Not nothing to write home about. It's worrisome. And I'm not saying, we had mentioned right with new head coach with Trotz. I think they were in a situation, not to try to, I don't want to move it over here, but like Trotz, I think was a really good technician of the game. I think he was a little bit stifling of offensive creativity, as we've mentioned. I think his personal relationships with players was subpar at best. I think on a human aspect, I think Lane Lambert, we can only hope for better on that, better relations with players, better communications, etc. But I think, to think that he's going to come in and step in and be just as good as a Hall of Fame caliber coach regarding X's and O's, regarding execution of playing game plans, I think it's unrealistic. So, I mean, like, we struggled against the really good teams last year. I think that we could also struggle against them this year for that reason too.
It's possible. One thing I will say about Lane, and again, I didn't get to see, the Islanders didn't really practice last year, which again, excuses what you're not, they didn't practice. That was Trotz's decision because they had so many games in a short amount of time. But we're seeing Lane at practice, and this guy, what I will say, is intense. It is 110%. He when he speaks to the media, very calm, very quiet, and that's just the way he operates. And that's probably a lot to do with Lou. Listen, like, we don't, Trotz was a talker. Trotz would take 10 minutes to answer one question, analytically talking about everything. And, that's the way he was. But with the media, Lane's very quiet. But on the ice, you don't do a drill right the first time. He stops the whole thing. He makes sure you do the drill. He calls you out. He's screaming at the players. Again, they didn't have practice last year. So it's very hard to say, well, did Trotz do that? Because, they had practices, but again, last year was much different. But I think Lane, the intensity is a positive for sure, and the players seem to love it. They feed off that. A lot of the players at practice, they miss a shot or they mess up a drill. They don't need Lane to tell them. They stop. They're mad. Smashing their stick on the glass. They care, and of course, every team's gonna say their players care. But when you do see it firsthand, it is different when you look at other teams where you might think, oh, look, they're getting killed. They have an awful record against winning teams. They don't care enough. I can say right now this Island team cares by just seeing their actions on the rink, because some teams might, they might mess up a drill and laugh it off. This team, they have their moments when they're laughing all the time, but there are moments when there's frustration on the ice in a practice. Like I told you, I know Roch isn't on the team. Now there's Isaiah George. They're battling one-on-one with each other, and it's getting physical. We saw in the scrimmage at UBS Arena, Wallstrom hit Johnston hard. Johnston was mad, where he cross-checked him back and hit him back. Like there's an intense group here. And to get back to your point, I think, struggling against playoff teams, you have to, like I said, you have to beat up on the bad teams. But, great teams beat the bad teams and the great teams. That's why they're great teams. Good teams beat bad teams and struggle against better teams. That's why they're good. That's why they're average. And if you're average in the NHL, you're not making the playoffs, or you're making it as a wild card spot, and you're going up against a juggernaut of an opponent like we saw last year. When was it? Colorado played Nashville, right? I think Daryl Sutter said, I wouldn't want to play Colorado. That's a waste of a week or something like that. That's what he said in the media. So, but you look at last year, though, and I think the tipping point of this season's done was that shutout loss to Seattle. It was a 3-0 loss right before the end of the first half. It was Pulak's first game back, I believe, where Trotz said that was the worst game he's ever been behind the bench for coaching-wise. There was no credibility. There was no accountability. It was terrible, and the players will say it, and that was that. So as much as if the Islanders do struggle against playoff teams, it really depends on how they lose, because there's two ways to look at it. You could say that the Islanders don't have the skill set to compete with those teams, and that's an issue in itself. Fine. But it's another thing where the Islanders look disengaged against the good teams and aren't giving 150%, because the only way to beat great teams if you're a good team is by outworking them. And sometimes that's even not, doesn't work. But if you're outworking a team, and you brought up the stat, actually, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the close games, people are overtime. Well, the Islanders system, they're supposed to win those close games. They're supposed to win those close games before it goes to overtime. If they have a lead in the third period, this system is supposed to be like we saw early with Trotz, which is the biggest difference from the Capuano days. It's like the Capuano days when the Islanders had a lead in the third period, you could probably bank that they were blowing it. They're either going to lose in regulation or lose in overtime. That's just exactly what happened. When Trotz came here and they figured out the system, they had a lead going into the third period. That game was over.
Yep.
So I think this year especially, besides beating those really good teams and trying to find a way to battle against those, you have close one-goal games where you're leading in the third period and you lose. You can't afford for that to happen. So I think, again, different structure, stronger defense. That record in those closer games should be on the positive side for sure. They have no choice, really. If it's not, they're going to have a really tough year. But I think if they understand the system and they go back to that shutdown like we saw the first couple of years under Trotz, you're automatically a better team because you're going to win those close games that they lost last year.
Grumpy, do you have a response there for that too? I'm adding up some numbers here.
That's fine. Oh, watch out, he's adding things up.
Well, because
I'm going
to ask you a broad NHL question.
Yeah.
Who are your two Stanley Cup finalists going to be this year? I'll tell you what. I'll give you three teams. Three teams.
All right. Well, I think it's impossible to count out Colorado. The one thing I will say about Colorado is their goaltending. Very big question mark. But again, this is a legitimate juggernaut team. In the East,
there's two teams from the East. Two teams from the East. There's only two.
Okay. Well, one, I think this could be Carolina's year, in my opinion. That's one of them. I love what they do there and the way they built. They brought in a guy like Brent Burns. That's big. A whole healthy season of Anderson. If he stays healthy, that would be my number one. You can never count out Tampa just because Tampa's Tampa. They always, doesn't matter who they rotate in the bottom six, they pick up guys that work. You have the best goalie in the league in Vasilevsky. So I'll say those two from the East, and then I got to think West. Let's see. Not going with Calgary. Just as good as I think they won in that trade, I don't think it's doable. Something about it, I don't know why. The Blues, to me, I don't know. I just Binnington showed last year in the playoffs that he could find a way to be himself, and if he's himself again, oh boy! Again, Tarasenko is back for another year, healthy, completely healthy. We saw what he did last year. Their young core, Kyrou, Tom. I mean, these are legitimate guys, and I think that they're a team that we talked about. Then maybe they're not defensive first the whole way, but they are a physical, tough. They wear you down, and they have the offensive output and the defense and goaltending all around to be a team that they might not be a top seed in their division, which doesn't have to be the case. You very rarely see the top team ever win a cup. It rarely happens. So I think you saw it last year, but
Binnington got hurt against Colorado, and that was the end of that series. Yeah. In the East, dark horse, even with the goaltender, Toronto. I think Toronto learned how to win losing to Tampa last year.
If they don't face Tampa, they're 100% getting out of the first round.
Yeah.
And they just did. And again, the question mark, goaltending aside, there's very big chance that goaltending is a disaster. But what people thought last year is, okay, well, Toronto, their biggest issue all the time is their defense. Their defense sucks. They allow too many shots and goal. That's why goalies fail. If you look at the stats last year, their defense was great. Their goalies just did not make the saves when they needed to make the saves. And I think that's a huge thing because when you bring in a guy like Samsonov and Murray, Samsonov has the potential to be great. Murray's shown it. Again, injuries have really derailed his career. But when they're not, again, go back to the Leonard and Greiss duo on the island. You have a defense in front of you that limits out high danger chances, keep stuff to the outside. Your goalie does not have to be an amazing goalie to have success. They could be average and still have success. Again, go back to it. Robin Leonard, the greatest human being ever in the fan base. They loved him. He was not an elite goaltender, but the system made him elite. And the defense for Toronto, if they could hold up what they did last year and they could get goaltending that's just average, last year they weren't, just average, they have a chance. And if the goalies can make those saves from the outside, control their rebounds, yeah, this team's a legitimate team because of what they have up front. No question about it. It just comes down to, can you trust the goaltending in big moments?
They consciously made a change in their system.
Of course.
Year. Even you could see it in the regular season. They consciously went away from full run and gun to be more defensively responsible. And that's why I'm saying, if you're a super talented team, if you have put some defensive structure, you can win a cup. When you're not talented, you struggle because you don't have that second gear. Where are we looking at the Islanders this year? Where are you looking at the Islanders?
Well, like I said, especially last year, every team that made it.
Remember, your press pass is on the line here, so be careful.
Yeah. Well, first off, if again, this is the biggest question mark of a season I've ever seen with the Islanders, just because of so many things that went wrong, and you're banking on so many things to go right for them to have success. Now you'll probably need 100 points, like we saw last year, to make it. I think the Islanders could be a wild card team, but they also have the potential, if things click, again, if things click, to finish in that top 3 spot. But I think they're more likely to find a way to battle in this system, learning it. Again, you're year one of a new system, if you want to call it new, to be a wild card spot. I do think they make the playoffs. But again, a lot of things have to go right for that to happen. And just from talking to players and seeing on the ice, this group's determined. But, could they miss the postseason? They could 100% miss the postseason and mimic what last year was, which goes to show that maybe, it's just the system, then, which is something that is very hard to judge because, shortened seasons they got in. But if Lane can get them to play their style where they do add offense, their defense could be a top 5 defense. Their goaltending duo could be a top 2 goaltending, top 1 goaltending duo. And that could be enough to get you in as a top wildcard spot. But if their system falls where they have to rely on offense, the playoffs can be rather tough because they don't have the pieces to score enough goals to make up for defensive mistakes.
And I do agree with you about Carolina. Every offseason, TJ and I go, man, what the hell's Carolina doing? Seems like they're taking steps back and they just get better. I think they need more secondary scoring.
Yeah,
and Brett Burns
tried to get that. They tried to get that with Pacioretty, but
and
Pacioretty
will be playing.
I know towards the tail end.
Brett Burns is huge for them. I agree with you. Brett, huge
veteran stability.
And what they would have I think they would have beaten the Rangers if they weren't playing their 3rd string goalie. Losing Anderson down the stretch really killed them. And then who is Prokhorov? Who's the he got hurt and they were playing, I don't know who the heck it was at the end. The same thing with Pittsburgh. I mean, I'm not as sold on the Rangers because, if Pittsburgh wasn't playing Louis Domingue, and you wonder if he had a contract already signed with the Rangers the way he played against them in the playoffs, Pittsburgh would have beat the Rangers.
If the Islanders weren't playing a miserable
Tristan
Jarry, who couldn't make a glove-size save, and then weren't playing Tuukka Rask on a career-ending injury, maybe we don't make it to the Eastern Conference Final that second.
But we play that game, and that's a valuable game to play. But at the same time,
we did.
Things that happen. Like the Islanders, you have to take advantage of this. It's going to happen. Injuries are going to happen. If you don't take advantage of it, then that's on you. Like, oh, well, the Islanders only made it because of X, Y, Z. All right, they made it because of X, Y, and Z. That's how it played out. That's how things happen. And I think I agree with you. Tristan Jarry, should he have played in that game, that last game? Personally, for me, understanding how goalie mind works, again, not the NHL level, Domingue was already in the series mentally. Like, he was engaged. Jarry, as much as he watched and wanted to play, and of course, he gives you a better chance to win, you're throwing him into a critical game where his mindset, technically, is not even involved in the series because he wasn't playing. And I think as bad as, Domingue made mistakes, I would have no doubt thrown Domingue out there for that game just because mentally, one, he was in that whole series, but two, Jarry's cold. He's cold. You're putting a cold goalie into a playoff situation when you must win. You have to be perfect in a game like that. And I do think if the Rangers went up against the elite Jarry that we saw during the regular season, the Penguins probably do win. And because the Rangers had to rely heavily on Shesterkin. And remember, early on in that series, Shesterkin wasn't great, right? Or was it the other? Yeah, Shesterkin wasn't that great. And he figured out because Pittsburgh gave him the opportunity to figure it out. If Pittsburgh buried him and didn't allow for the Rangers to come back with weaker goaltending, that series is probably over much earlier than it was, and it probably goes in the Penguins' favor for sure. But I think the Rangers, they're good. They're good. The question is are they going to be good enough where they do not have to rely on Shesterkin every night? Again, their defense is very young, very talented. Their forward group, they have a lot of question marks in their forward group. Kako has to be what he was taken second overall for a reason. He's got to be that. There can't be, he's playing the 3rd line minutes again. You need your young, again, every team needs their young guys eventually that they draft to be the players they were, because without that, teams get older really quick. We've seen it happen in the Island. And if there's not young youth coming in that makes, because you can have young youth come up all you want. they don't make a difference. It doesn't matter. They're not going to stick. And for the cap situation, I mean, getting rid of Strowman, they added Trocheck, right? Like that's an upgrade. So I think you see the Rangers, I think are going to be more, you're not going to get what you got from Kreider last year. He could have a great season all you want. He's not scoring that many goals. It's not happening. So you're going to have secondary scoring, which was a big Panarin. He did not play like Panarin last year. Like he needs to play like the guy they're paying $11+ million. He's got to be a difference maker. So I think the Rangers have a lot of question marks, just like the Islanders. And I think that it comes down to secondary scoring, tertiary scoring. Your top line can't be it. Kreider can't be the only guy putting the puck in on more nights because, again, you can't rely on that being the case. Again, he had a great season. Stricken had a great season. You can't bank on that stuff. That's not how hockey works.
I got a quick fact or a quick stat. I want to get to some comments I think bring up good items. So on those when we played those playoff caliber teams, the 11-25-3 records, we averaged 2.48 goals a game, surrendered on average 3.82 goals a game. So just to talk about the disparity, it was quite large, about 1.4 goal difference. Maybe you're pulling goalies, maybe the other team's pulling goalies if you're losing game. I'm just saying about 1.4 goal differential on average every game that we were losing to those.
Can I just hit on why I think that happened last year?
Yeah.
When you have Chara and Green in the defensive,
I was just going to say the defensive system.
The higher
level, the playoff teams have higher level offensive players, and that's where we get exposed. We can't get out of our zone, leads to second chances, high danger chances. And that's why, hopefully, it might not be immediately with Romanov. Hopefully, he can kind of stabilize that. We haven't seen it yet. So it's going to be a work in process. I hope it doesn't take till game 25 or 30 before he gets comfortable, because by then we could be, on the outside looking in again. But that's why I feel that was mostly the case.
And that's why I said before that, if it doesn't work out right off the bat with Dobson and Romanov, I don't see the harm in separating Pelican. The Islanders had no problem doing that last year. Separating Pelican Pulock to make sure Chara, to make that work. They did it. They switched it up. So I think that if you could see that very well again, it just, to me, makes a lot of sense with stability. But you talked about it last year too, is like, they couldn't keep up with the other teams and the high scoring chances for the opponents. But like I said before, when you have a Barzal line on the rink and they're stuck in their own zone, they get the puck, they're jumping and changing. You just eliminated 30 or 40 second offensive zone shift from them each time they play where they get stuck in their own zone. You're not only surrendering goals and chances, you're limiting your ability for your top players to play. Same thing with taking penalties. People look at it as like, the penalty kill was so good. But if the penalty kill is out there all the time in games and they have success, that's great. One, they get tired, but two, Barzal's not on the penalty kill. Your top players aren't killing penalties, which means that the more times you're in the box, the less likely you have a chance of scoring because your top players aren't on the ice. So, a lot goes into the offensive side of the puck suffers when you're playing defensive hockey, when you're stuck in your own zone.
And got a few comments here I want to showcase.
Yeah.
Judge C saying, I know, 8:30 TJ time. I know. I ran
it's
late.
8:30 somewhere.
Apologize. Scott H says, hopefully you guys and myself are way off base with this team, and they're really good this year. Last year, I was all in, and I doubted your negative outlook with Chara, and you turned out to be right. Love the show. Well, thank you, Scott H. We appreciate it.
We're always right, by the way. Just in case you don't know, Stefen, we're never wrong. At least I'm never wrong.
Well, you had me on the show, so you made the right decision there. So
there you go.
I like
it. What I will say about Chara is that you can't deny that he struggled mightily in the first half. But what people don't give him credit for is he was slow. He did, but what he did for Dobson will always be something that he had. That is a monumental point for Dobson's career, playing with Chara. No matter how bad Chara was, just to have Chara in his ear, no doubt changed Dobson's career, in my opinion. Number two, they did play better in the second half. Again, way too late. Everything that went wrong, but I do think Chara will be remembered for being bad on the ice. But boy, did he have an impact on Dobson and the rest of the group. You talk to everyone in that group. Chara had so much more of an impact. And again, it was a lost season, but you certainly can't blame the lost season on Chara. I don't think that's fair at all. Did he play a part in their struggles? No doubt about it, but everyone did. And I think, there's some guys where they played bad and didn't have impact on players like the way Chara did. Chara could have been bad and not helped Dobson, and it's a major loss. But the fact that he helped Dobson and the rest of the young guys just with his work ethic and everything like that, you could call it in a lost season. You really could call that a plus if you want to look the positive route. Not everybody wants to be positive, and I get that. I understand that and respect that. But I think there was value for sure in Chara being there. It just didn't work out on the ice, but off the ice, I think it was definitely a positive, especially when it was a loss season. That's more time where Dobson, Chara could just be a teacher because the Islanders weren't winning. He could really focus on helping this kid. And I think he did.
At the end of the day, no one is going to remember Chara's last year with the Islanders.
Correct.
Nope.
No one's going to remember it. And I say that Dobson got better because he was playing defense all by himself out there for the most part with Chara.
He's playing two roles. And the other thing, too, that he doesn't get a lot of credit for, he would be able to shift momentum in games sometimes with a key.
Oh, the fighting
energy.
No.
I was gonna say, I can't tell you how many times it's like, holy crap, we look like we're dragging ass, we're skating in sand, we've got cinder blocks attached to us. Chara gets into a fight and we see complete momentum change, and we're in a different outlook. And the team ends up, galvanizing behind that, wins the game. And that's something he did a fantastic job of. You just really can't put pen to paper on. It's not a stat.
And the biggest, definition of what Chara meant to the fan. I mean, all the fans say what they want to say about Chara, but you go back to that last game at home. That last game it was writing an article about that was probably one of the best moments of last year for me, just because you can't put words to paper on sounds and emotions, and trying to write about it doesn't do it justice. But being in there and then talking to Chara after, it was insane. The support for him, because again, statistically, he was terrible, and the Islanders were bad. Everything, but for that 3 periods of hockey, they lost. They lose in overtime that game. So over whatever it was,
Tampa, right? Tampa. Correct?
Yeah, the last game of the season. I think they lost in overtime.
And he scored a goal.
He scored a goal, but even if he didn't score a goal, for 3 periods, nothing mattered. And I really was looking at it wasn't the respect. Not only what he had done, because everyone knew what he was doing for Dobson and the group and his veteran leadership, but coming home after being drafted by the Islanders, his whole career, that showed the fans' true colors. Because you could say what you want behind the screen or whatever, nobody in that room was booing him, and because they couldn't. It honestly was a magical moment just to be there and witness that. And yeah, I think he showed there just how much. The other team, when you see another team come over and shake his hand, that's all you got to know. Right. A guy that Chara, even after fights, Chara fought Martin a couple of times before he joined the team. After every fight, Chara tapped him on the back. The respect level for what he's done and also what he did with the Islanders. Because, listen, Chara probably wanted to be out there every night, and of course he did. And you don't feel bad for a guy that's, he's playing in the NHL, but regardless of how bad he was, he did give it he did what he could. He was 40 plus years old. He could only do what he could do. And he still went out there every night from the booze, from the stats, and did what he could. It wasn't effective enough when the Islanders needed it most. But it wasn't like he was out there not caring. If he wasn't caring, first off, he wouldn't be in the league after 40. So I think that, it says a lot about him as a person, as a player, and as a warrior, because he fit the Islanders mold. He was the definition of a warrior. And, his career is done. But yeah, you look at him and you look at Yager, these guys were warriors, and that's why their work ethic and what they teach these younger generation of players that unfortunately kids growing up now won't know Chara. But what they will see is they'll see players that learn from Chara that might not, you never know that they learn from Chara, but watching Dobson play and kids growing up wanting to be Dobson. Well, Dobson's the player he was because of Chara. So there's a tree that'll always be connected. You look at Charlie McAvoy, players that grow up now watching Charlie McAvoy, even Torrey Krug, they have no idea who Chara is. But by watching those guys play, they won't know that. But Chara had huge impact on them. So Chara's legacy will be in players for years because those players will teach younger players what Chara taught them. And Chara's mentality is never leaving the game.
Matthew S. says, Stefen, my guy. He's got.
Well, he did say Steven.
He corrected it after. Stefen. So it was just a typo.
It's all good. Again, I've been called worse. It's all good. I blame my parents.
L says, how do you mess up his name? I know.
You know who said that? Dan didn't say that. The baby did. My friendly baby did.
Baby knew how to pronounce the name. That's where I struggled.
My middle name is Paul. I think it might be a little easier, but that's too easy.
That baby is my favorite baby on the whole podcast.
JG says, now it makes sense, Grumpy. You have to give CJ his name to keep it simple for himself. Yeah. Absolutely, JG.
Total jackass? Is that what it stands for?
It does. It stands
no comment. I'm sorry. I can't comment on that one, Steve.
Oh, shit.
Steven / Stefen.
Jeez.
Says, Stefan, do you think that Lou will get Barzal a bona fide scoring winger?
You can say no. It's
Depend-
okay.
do I think he'll get him? I don't think so, because I think that Lou truly believes that the answer is internal. Again, that's just from a standpoint of talking to him and the group. I don't think he'll want to, because I think he thinks he has it here. So unless those kids in Wallstrom, I'm saying Wallstrom without saying Wallstrom. If Wallstrom shows this year that he can't be a legitimate goal scorer and eventually play with Barzal, then he really has no choice, because Barzal's here for another 8 years. You can't go 8 years without bringing someone in. Will Lou be around for that? Who knows? But I think right now, internally, he thinks that the answer is there. So I think right now, no.
Thank you there. And JG says, it looks like TJ reads the clock similar to how he reads the comments.
Ouch.
Oh, man.
That's a brutal slam on TJ, by the way.
I know. It's an indictment for my inability to read. Doug R says, Grumpy old man, my condolences. Simon Holmstrom was assigned to Bridgeport. Grumpy, I know you're heartbroken about that.
God. There was no way he deserved to make the team. No.
JG says, Grumpy, did you like Bailey's 3-point night against the Flyers? He's gonna continue this point production right into the season, Grumpy.
I want to say he's a goal thief, because that puck was on the line going in the net, and he's like, I'm never. First of all, he's allergic to the front of that. He was already backing away from the net when he hit this. He tapped it in there at the last second. That thing was going in. He's like, it's probably the only goal I'm going to have all year, because I won't shoot the puck. I won't go near the net. I have to stay along, hang on to the glass, and have my mommy give me a sippy cup to have my little juice box.
Well, they don't ask how, they ask how many.
They don't ask many for him, that's for certain.
Stefan,
he's the king of the secondary assist.
I wanted to say this joke yesterday. I knew Grumpy would get. Stefan, do you play video games?
Yes.
Do you play Rocket League?
No.
What? What is it called?
Never mind. Rocket League. Never mind. Okay, never mind, Grumpy. It was like
I play NHL, and then I am a workaholic, so I don't play that much. Besides that, like when NHL comes out, I'll grind on it for a while and probably play that. I like FIFA too. I'm a big sports video game guy.
FIFA guy, Grumpy.
I played soccer my whole life, so I played soccer throughout high school and travel. High school, I played soccer, hockey, tennis. I love sports. That's obviously, if you could tell, I like sports.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Dedicated to the craft. Dedicated.
So go ahead, hit the joke with the rocket thing.
Well, no, it doesn't make sense. Neither of you understand the reference, so it doesn't. It's not even like I can get like a half chuckle out of Stefan from it, because he doesn't.
Okay, okay, move on.
Big time. 28 says it was reported wrong. Barzal didn't re-sign Grumpy. It was Josh Bailey to an 8-year contract extension. Grumpy.
Don't get my blood.
I definitely shook Barzal's hand. I could tell you rather than him, so I could tell you firsthand it was Barzal.
Oh, I was about to say that plaque.
Here's the thing. They're trying to get me riled up about Josh Bailey.
No, Grumpy, they would never do that, the listeners of the show. Scott L says, good luck to Ratu, DeFore, and Bridgeport with a great coach of Thompson who can't develop forwards. Hopefully, he won't ruin their career. That's something I want to ask you about.
Well, first out, Scott Levy spelled there wrong, and you can't tolerate that. But what I will say is that as much as Thompson wants to get blamed, and I wrote an article about this earlier in the offseason, is that this is a critical year for him. But when was the last time he had this many? You look at Dow Cole, didn't pan out, of course. I don't think Delgo had it in him to ever pan out, to be quite honest. You look at talent, and there's talent and there's developmental talent, like Holmstrom. It comes to a point where, your coach could be as good or as bad as he is, whatever. But when you get the chance and you still, you're not taking steps, that's also on you. Yes, coach deserves blame, but you have Dufour, Ratu, and guys like that in the minors. You have pieces that you could work with now that I don't think Thompson had in his arsenal for a while. Again, there's guys that didn't develop, and it's on the coach. I agree. But at the same time, you got two quote-unquote weapons here. Like I said, Ratu is going to be an NHLer, in my opinion. He's going to be a second-line center. He's there. You have talent, and you have Bolduc back. This is a big year for Thompson, but there's upside where he gets to work with top-end prospects the Islanders really haven't had. Hostang maybe was the last one. And again, was Hostang's lack of development on Thompson? It sounds like Hostang mentally couldn't do it. So again, you can blame Thompson all you want, but I think this year he's got weapons and prospects at the level that he's not really had the chance to work with. So if these guys don't pan out, we'll see. But God, like you brought it up, Grumpy. Like his skin has to get better.
Yep.
The coach can't control him being it's on him.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think for a lot of guys in the minors, look at Holmstrom. He was given the chance to play with Barzal. That's not Thompson's fault that he didn't pan out in those, like he didn't finish chances or do what he has to do. So I think, yeah, coach has a responsibility, but if the Islanders have a bad year because guys don't score and they miss open nets, how can you blame Lambert? Similar, you can't blame Brent Thompson. If guys that need to work on certain skills work on them and they don't get better at them, Thompson's doing what he can. If Dufour doesn't improve his skating because Dufour is just not a good enough skater, that's on Dufour's limited physical ability to get better at that thing. That's not on Thompson.
Or it's on the fact that we're drafting the wrong people.
Again, but that's not on Thompson, though.
Right.
Unless you
Right,
bring Thompson in the room.
It's not.
I think there's always two jobs that an AHL head coach has, right?
Yeah.
To instill a winning mentality and a winning attitude amongst young men who are developing into professionals and help develop and hone in on their skills, right? You know, it just like you
and they're coming off a year when they made the playoffs for the first time and go into the first round. There's confidence there that a lot of that group is back. And you got great veteran leaders down there too.
First postseason win for the Bridgeport Islanders in like 2 decades. So
yeah. So you have something to work on. Again, a lot of those guys are back. And now you're adding younger talented players with higher ceilings. Like again, Rossi, you saw him against this kid. He was, I think Thompson, when we spoke to him, I was on the Bridgeport beat for their run talking to Thompson and the players, and Thompson kept saying, you know, he's been here for a week and you throw him into the system and he clicks.
Yep.
That goes back to that IQ that, you know, has Thompson had a player with that IQ? Again, I don't think so. So I think that you have players now that Thompson can, again, I know Thompson's job is developing players, but if you're not drafting the right players, it doesn't matter who your coach is.
Yep. Here's the thing. There is no comparison between Ratu and Holmstrom. Absolutely none.
There's no comparison between Ratu and Dufour.
Right. None. Ratu, like I said, for a guy who'd only been there, and we talked about it at the time. For a guy, I thought it was maybe 6 games, whatever it is that he played. I'm like, that kid's going to make it.
Yep.
You could tell.
Him, McLean, and I was disappointed in McLean. Like I said, I'd expected more from him. I expected him to challenge for a 4th line spot. And Salo. That was it. Corey Snyder looked good too. Probably
Corey Snyder has looked, by the way, he has looked great. And he won confidence last year. Last year was his real first year he could play. And he played a whole off season. And he looked at a training camp. I would talk to, you know, Andrew Gross and Newsday. And again, I'm watching the goalies religiously just because I'm goalie fascinated by the position and how they work. He looks very good. And I think that, will he ever get a chance at NHL level again? I'm not sure. But he's a guy that if you needed a backup, let's say anyone went down or they traded Varlamov at the deadline, there should be no concern with Schneider backing up Sorokin for the season. Yeah. And if Schneider shows that he could do it, let's say he could play minimal games and do that, and you want to bring him back as your backup to Sorokin, because look at Vasilevsky. Vasilevsky's backup last year was Brian Elliott.
Yep.
Okay? And if Sorokin's going to be the starter, he's going to play like Vasilevsky level, and Schneider could go in there and win his games or give him a chance and shows that he's healthy enough at the minimum, the deal he's getting at a league minimum for veterans, that's a win for the organization.
Nick D says the MILFs, Cougars, and Gilfs like Lambert. Oh, for certain.
So there is an actual, like, I guess MILFs are younger than Cougars and Gilfs are grandmothers, correct?
Grandmothers, Grumpy.
And Cougars are after MILFs. Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure I got my age.
Cougars and MILFs could be in the same territory, Grumpy. So if we're talking about it specifically.
Okay. Cougars
Michael M says, Stefen is very well spoken. Make him nervous, he says. Start asking about the inside the media cartel info we might have not heard of before. Oh,
every time he takes a pass on one of those questions, that means I know that I'm correct.
You can ask me whatever you want, and if I can answer it without getting myself in trouble, I will. I mean, again, I know you wouldn't put me in that situation, obviously.
Trouble. We don't ever want to.
No, of course, but yeah, I mean,
maybe your player will ask. We'll talk shit, and but not anything that they can trace back to you. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, I got snipers in the windows right here. I got to be careful. My blinds are closed though. So
can you believe that we don't have a press pass? Can you believe it?
I know, it's a shock.
It's wild.
Actually, TJ, they could give you one because you just. You talk with that cool jazz voice. Hey, let me ask you a question, Lane Lambert.
I'm pretty sure we're on the persona non grata list from them, and that's fine. Scott Ellis,
it's an interesting question.
Who do you think will have a breakout year?
when you have a group of veterans, can you say that someone's going to have a breakout year? Because they've already played in the NHL. It's very tough. There's only one guy that can have a real breakout year, or two, I guess. Bellows and Wallstrom. That's it. Or Salo. But besides that, all these guys have broken into the league. It's very tough for you, unless you call somebody up and they dominate. But they're all proven NHLers. So I don't think there's anyone that, besides those two young guys, that could have breakout years. Maybe Shashnikov if he gets a chance because he hasn't been in the league for a while. But besides that, there's not really anyone that should, unless Palmieri scores 50, and that's not breaking out. I'm just saying.
Well, he's got 3 more years on his contract, so he could probably score.
Yeah, you never know. He could score 150 goals. Yeah.
Well, I was saying 50 in 3 years.
Imagine how Grumpy would react if we were paying 9.1 million AAV to Bailey instead of Barzal. I think his head would literally explode. Grumpy, I'm not sure. We talk about how grumpy you are. If that were to happen, let's just say we're in some sort of alternate reality where that happened. I can only imagine how difficult it would be to work with Grumpy on a bi-weekly basis. Holy shit.
If they signed Bailey to an extension for 9.15, that means the salary cap would be $9 billion a year. That's the only way he's worth that kind of money. 9 billion with the I'm going to go 9 trillion with the T. How about that?
What's above trillion? Why don't you just go there next, Grumpy?
A gazillion, zillion. I don't know. Here's the thing: I don't have $9 trillion. I don't even have 9 billion. So it's hey, what can I tell you?
Michael M says, "Love and laughter at all, unless you're lying to the grumpy old man." Bam. Oh, there it is. Scott L says, Stefan, what are your thoughts on Josh? He calls him Invisibailey is what he meant to say here. But Josh Bailey. What are your thoughts on Josh Bailey?
I think that last year you saw a veteran play, again, in my opinion, you saw a veteran play like a first-year player at times, and Bailey holds himself to a high standard. There were times where he was throwing pucks just to the neutral zone, getting picked off. Those are rookie mistakes. This is a guy that's about to play his 1,000th game in the NHL, but if you're going to give people like Palmieri or people like passes for last year, you do have to do it for Bailey. And notoriously, Bailey's a guy in the playoffs that has done well. A high IQ guy that, again, high IQ works as long as you're able to keep up with the speed of the NHL game. Now, the IQ might have worked for Bailey a couple years ago, but as the game gets faster, if your IQ doesn't adapt and you can't think faster, you get left in the whatever you want to call it. And that's what happened to Bailey last year. It seemed like the game passed him by. And could he still be an effective player? Yeah, but he can't be relied upon. This guy's not going to score 20 goals or rack up the assist mark. But what he will do, like I said before, on a good line, he's a checker. He's not a point producer.
I think it was weird because when he was demoted, when he played games on the third line, I'm like, holy shit. There's the energy and there's the freaking effort level I'm looking for out of you.
I think
I understand if you
they were asking too much of him, and the game I think did pass him by when you put him in a situation when, again, surrounded him with other veterans. There were times where he was on line with a lot of younger players, and it's hard to keep up with those guys, especially those guys that don't know what they're doing.
And you ask him to do too much, and you increase his workload. I think it's tougher for him. It kind of pulls him in all different directions. That's what I worry about with Zach Parise playing on the first line. They're not going to say, "Hey, Zach, I know he's not playing the power play, but." As we change things up, undoubtedly, as we look for what works at the start of the season, I just worry that, hey, I don't want Zach Parise being pulled in every which way in direction to where it's like the effort level we saw on the ice as him being a freaking plug starter. He played like 15 plus minutes, around 15-ish minutes a night.
And he was the only Islander to play in every single game last year. And the one thing I will say, again, I'm very high on Parise. I won't worry about him until he gives you a reason to worry. Now, is he going to take a step back? Every player every year takes a step back a little bit, especially health-wise. Can he stay healthy the whole year? But the guy's energy level, I think when he retires, he'll be the same, again, not production output-wise, but he will retire playing the same type of game he played when he broke into the league. Maybe he's not scoring as many goals, but the guy's energy level is just absurd, and I have no reason to look at him and say he's going to have a down year or step back because he hasn't given me any reason to, in my opinion, he hasn't given me any reason to worry.
Grumpy, you were about to say something about Josh Bailey.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on Josh Bailey. I don't know.
Would you?
Grumpy, what is your opinion on Josh Bailey? I've never heard it. Please tell me.
He sucks and blows. I don't know which one is worth, but he's on the combo plan. And the one thing I've said on this show a million times. Now, Stefan said that
the IQ, right? You're going to bring that up?
No. You said if you're expecting Josh Bailey to score 20 goals, you're going to be disappointed. He's never scored 20 goals in the season.
No, that's what I'm saying, though. He's not going to do that.
And the one thing that always drives me crazy is when people say, well, gosh, He's so smart. And I'm like, you know what they never say about Josh Bailey? Man, you're really good. You know what?
You're
And
so
the line is
fast. You're
the
so
line.
skilled. You're so smart.
That's right. The line out of Bad News Bears is, "Hey Ogilvy, it ain't like algebra, is it?" That's what I feel it's like when he gets up there to stand at the plate. I'm not a fan of Josh Bailey. Just to let you know.
Oh, you're not? I couldn't tell.
All right. I didn't know if you could. I just wanted to clarify. I want
I
you to make
appreciate
sure
that.
I don't want, there's no gray area with me. It's yes or no. Bailey sucks and blows. And I'm afraid Simon Holston is Bailey 2.0.
Oh no. JG says all I want to know is, when does Barzal get to see? This is a question.
When Lee leaves.
You think it's going to be when Lee leaves? You don't think it's going to be like a transition, like the him to the A into the C? Because
I've never again. My first time being on a beat, being up and close in person with players. You saw Tavares in the media, and I'm not saying he was a bad leader. You don't know. He didn't talk. He was like a robot. Anders Lee throughout last year, the leadership that he showed with habit is he never once missed a media session. He always answered the questions. I remember one moment, and I wrote about this, and it was a big moment for me too. Is we were in a media where we sit and they bring the players out and we talk to them. And it was after a bad loss to Colorado. I think they gave up like 6 or 7 goals. And I said to Lee, I know what happened in this game, but what are the positives you could take away? And he goes, Farley, that's it. And again, I'm a young guy. First couple of times asking questions, I don't want the players to, you want to make a good first impression. And I was sitting down, looking down at my stats, and he's walking out, and he tapped me on the shoulder. And he goes, I just want to say, we never gave up. And he goes on and credits everything the team did right. There's some captains that would be mad after the loss, wouldn't say enough, or just say what they said and walk out, and that's where I would run. Farley was the only positive. He took the time, which he did not have to do again. Not at all. Come over to me, who asked the question, and make sure that he knew that I knew that there were other things that were positive. Like, he didn't have to do that for me at all. He didn't know me. I'm no one to him. And so for me, that was a huge moment because, I never experienced, that was my first interaction with a player. So for him to do that spoke volumes to his leadership, because any other captain after a loss probably would say what they said, face the meeting, and go back to the room. That was what they would do. And the fact that he took the time, it meant a lot to me, first off, and I think it showed no one ever doubted his ability to lead. It just was a big moment for me to say, okay, this guy, this is a captain.
Okay, 2 quick questions.
Average Anders on the ice, way above average off the ice.
Now, his nickname on this show is Average Anders Lee, and he gets that because I think he's above average, standing in front of the net, deflecting pucks, doing the things he does well.
Fantastic. He's a great garbage man. Does a great job of
very good at that.
Areas.
Very good at that.
A blue collar, work pail type of guy, and you need guys like that. Absolutely.
He's below average as a skater,
yes.
Below average as a creator. So I call him Average Anders. Now I want to say I like that he was a little bit more physical so far this preseason, because that seemed like it disappeared from his game.
You also have to remember, I know, again, you can talk about his skating not being a strength, but this guy came back from a torn, again, not taking away with anything you said. This guy came back from a torn ACL faster than any athlete has, and that affects you. And he wasn't completely healthy last year. We talked to Lambert this year, and Lee looks different. He does. Physicality, I'm not saying the skating's improved, because Lee is what he is as a skater. But again, you have to look at it. Did he rush back? I don't think he would have played if he rushed back hurt. But it took time to get back into it. I think that physicality you talked about, we asked Lane, like, are you asking Lee to be like that? And he goes, no, Lee said, like this is how Lee's going to play. And again, physicality, when you're getting older, does impact you negatively usually in your NHL career. Look at, guys that play 4th line minutes and grind. Their careers are a lot shorter. But at the same time, if he's good at going to the front of the net and winning puck battles and doing that, and the skating is the issue, but he's scoring goals. If he's good at what he does and stays good at what he does, he's not supposed to be the fastest skater on that line. And this is when Bo comes in, Baville, because we talked about it. The struggle with Lee skating, all that comes back to it because no one on that line was using their feet. And you look at the leader, and Lee wasn't. So if you have a guy like Baville chasing down those loose pucks, making plays, you don't need Lee to be a speed skater out there. Lee can focus on what he's good at. And one, that's leading, front presence, winning puck battles. And if you look at, again, Parise, same thing, obviously a better skater. But Parise is going to be good at what he's going to be good at. And it's up to everybody else in their line to pull the weight because, as much as Lee is, to you, average Lee, He scored 28 goals last year.
It's
Again,
average Anders, not averagely.
sorry.
Anders.
Average Anders. He's good at what he does. And if he could be more physical this year and win those battles and stuff, and again, it's going to come down to his line mates. Bo has to have a big year.
So you're saying that with more physicality, that potentially he'll wear down more in his career. So you're saying potentially his contract could even look worse than it's probably going to look now by the end with increased physicality?
Well, I'm also saying he's healthier than he was last year.
Okay. So, like, I will say this.
TJ's not even going to touch that disagreement. I know.
It's going to go on for, because it's not true. It's like, I've had knee surgeries before. He skated in May of 2020. If you actually look at the stats, he struggled all during the year. 2 weeks before the trade deadline, turns it on, has great production. 2 weeks after the trade line, still having good production, and then it goes in ebbs and flows. I think the story about him, the item where, because we've been talking about him, is he the guy that needs to be captain? Grumpy always brings up Joe Namath as a situation and how he was a star player there for the Jets, and how him being elected captain of the team forced him to mature as an individual and forced him to move. Grumpy, I'll let you talk about the story, because I think it's so apropos. We have talked about it all offseason long. Yeah. Hearing that story about Anders that Stefen just said just kind of changes my opinion. But Grumpy, I want you to bring up the story.
Before Grumpy goes, just one thing before I forget is, if you're about to say, like, giving Barzal the C would make him more mature, I've talked to everybody in the room this year, especially with the contract. Everybody speaks about his maturity level improving. So I think that if you're going to say that he wants to be a captain to raise his maturity level, that's not needed. If that's the reason you want to make him captain, if you think he could be a better captain, that's one thing. But to raise his maturity level, Mat Barzal is much more mature than he was when he started with the organization in 2016. And every year, he has his running with the rest, but you didn't see that much last year, even with the struggles. And his maturity level has been talked about every point with every player.
We said that in the interviews. He sounds much. We said it like
last
week. Last week we said, "Holy crap, he's matured a lot."
Oh yeah, just talking to him. First off, nicest guy ever. Nicest guy ever. He'll talk to you, and he speaks like he's a 20-year veteran in the league, and that he understands. It's not. Some players you talk to where it's like, the media. Like, he speaks now to the media like Lee does, which is crazy because I wasn't in the media when he first started, but a young player coming to the league, maybe you're a little cocky. I don't know. I wasn't there, but now it's like talking to a guy that is a veteran, and he acts like a veteran, even though he's still young.
For me, best player on the team should be captain. Absolutely.
I disagree, but
okay, that's fine. The best player on the team should be captain, particularly if he is mature like that. I feel Mat Barzal, it's in signing that deal. Now he has to be the focal point, reaching out to free agents. It has to be.
Of course.
It has to be him. And being a captain carries more weight. I feel it does. But now he's the man on this team for the period.
He's the face of the brand.
Everybody else is battling for second. I just want to get to the name of the story real quick.
Yeah.
They had a problem. They had an issue, or Bank went to some of the veterans on the team who had been captains, Jerry Philbin, Dave Herman, and they said, you know what? I think you need to elect Joe captain this year because it'll calm him down off the field, give him that responsibility, because they felt that Joe Namath at the time, he was a notorious partier, right? You've heard all the stories.
Yeah.
And they said, but I want you to make him captain this year. And they're like, man, he's no captain material. But they named him captain. And it brought maturity to Joe Namath. And they won the Super Bowl that year. And Namath, to this day, says that was the greatest honor that he ever had, was being named captain by his teammates. And we opined earlier, like last year, and it looks like he has matured anyway, that maybe you do that for Mat Barzal. It gets him to mature, where sometimes you see him get a little really worked up on the ice and stuff will calm him down. One thing I noticed last year, I just want to touch on this real quick, then I'll let you talk, Steph. I thought at the end of the year, Mat Barzal was subtly calling out some of the veterans and how hard they were working at the end of the year. Do you think the team at the end of the year kind of took their foot off the gas a little? I'm not going to say quit, but I'm going to say took their foot off the gas a little bit, because it seemed like Mat Barzal kind of felt that way at the end.
So what I think, again, I don't want to put excuse. I think they didn't give 100% effort because they couldn't. This team was absolutely, at first, I think the scheduling that the league did to them in the first half with COVID, and the second half, the amount of games that they were done. there was nothing left in the tank. Now, again, you could always find that gear in a game. I don't think it was on purpose, the lack of effort. I just think this, again, a veteran and older team, they just couldn't do it. And if you ever saw a lack of effort, it might be because they were trying to save, they're not going that hard in the first because they need to save that energy for the third. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I think veterans took their foot off the gas because they needed to be able to survive another period. I don't think there was we don't care anymore. I just think they couldn't. They couldn't do it, and that goes down to, again, they didn't practice. Were they in shape? Of course, they were playing games every other night, but that's not stable enough. But what I will say about Barzal, and I spoke to Martin about this, is, and I said, is Barzal a leader on this team? First off, everyone said he's a leader. Pajot today, I spoke to him for like 10 minutes, a leader, the greatest guy. But Matt Martin made a good point. He goes, look around this room. He goes, anyone in this locker room could say whatever is on their mind at any given time. We all respect and trust what they're saying as a leader. Like, yes, Anders wears the C. Everyone, by the way, when Trotz came in and asked someone, like, who would you want to be captain? Everybody, this is what Trotz says, everybody said Lee. So I think that Barzal will be a captain this season eventually. Will it be Lee passing it to Barzal? I don't think they would ever strip Lee, and it would be a mutual. I don't think they would just come up out of nowhere like they did in Winnipeg this year and say, hey, we're stripping you the captaincy. This is what's happening. I think Lee will be part of that decision if it comes down to that. But everyone in this room is a leader, and Barzal on the ice, first off, he's always celebrating, he's always cheering, but he's always complimenting the players when they do good things. He leads by example because being the best player. Like, if there was no C on the ice and you had to say which one of those guys is the leader on the ice, you didn't say Lee because he's leading the stretches and he's out there going up to guys too. Barzal is right there.
So you think he should get an A on his jersey, like, sooner rather than later?
For sure. I don't believe in stripping stuff because, again, that's voted on by stuff in the room that we don't see. As much as we want to blame players, we're not seeing the off-ice stuff, or, you don't like Josh Bailey, but you don't see what they impact off the ice. And
I forgot Bailey's got an A.
But the players vote that stuff. So we're on the outside looking in saying, oh, that person shouldn't be captain. Like, go back to your best player thing. This is probably a crazy opinion on my part, but, like, young players in the NHL that just come in shouldn't be captains after 1 year because they don't know how to be NHL players, let alone lead at the NHL level, because they haven't played in the NHL. Like, Connor McDavid, of course, they hasn't been to see. But I think it was really quick. You see young teams give players like that leadership roles when they haven't even proven to be NHL leaders. They haven't been leaders on the rink. And also, like, look at Alex Ovechkin. He's the best player on the Washington Capitals, not even close. Is he the best leader? I don't know. Again, was that a voted decision, or was that the team saying this is our best player, we got to do it? Because who knows? There was a long time where Ovechkin wouldn't play defense. Yeah, he just wouldn't.
It was the same thing the Islanders did early in their history. Eddie Westfall was initially the captain, and then some of the players didn't want him because his play had diminished.
Like Ovechkin, though, not playing defense, was he committing to a team game early in his career when he had this team? I don't think so. Again, that's up for debate. But you look at, like, even Doug Wynn. Okay, so then why does he have the C? So why is he getting the C?
I think he's got the C because it's like you talk about the status that comes with that. It's like,
no, I completely get that point, but to me, that shouldn't be the reason you like Doug Weight was not the best player. I mean, he was up there because even like he was still good, but was he the best player on that team skill wise? No, he was the best leader. The best leader should wear the C, in my opinion. The guy that leads, doesn't matter if you're a first line player or a fourth line player.
But
if you get the room and lead,
you have to be on the ice a lot, I think.
Oh,
I mean, it's like
you're not going to be a fourth line scrub.
Like Derek McKenzie was a fourth line scrub for the Florida Panthers. He was their captain for a year, and they're like, nope, this can't work. He didn't play enough. He did, and then the same thing with Westfall. His play slipped. Some people were unhappy with his leadership. They gave it to Gillies. After, I think, 2 years, it was too much for Gillies, and then Potvin took over. And that's, Gillies was young when he got that. And everyone said, yeah, Gillies is the guy. But, it was too much for Gillies, and he gave it up for Potvin. For me, like I said, it's nice to hear that Mat Barzal has matured. I thought he did at the end of last year when he subtly called the team out for their hustle. Very subtly, but we picked up on it, and it made me, I'm glad you're here to get your spin on it. But I thought that was interesting that he had grown where he actually said that in the press.
Yeah. And again, it's invaluable too to have that. And it's great to see that, what we had thought is also, being reciprocated by somebody who sees that firsthand. And Bruce K says, if you're loyal to the Islanders, you get rewarded.
Do we all get hats, helmets like that? That's what I want.
Well, the Islanders just released their promotional nights, by the way. You should check out their website. They got some cool ones going on, so you can get some of those hats and stuff and scarves.
I'd love to get a helmet like that.
When does the free Shack burger come out? Because I'll make it. I'll travel for a free Shack burger evening.
Okay, hold on, Steph. You're a youngster.
Yeah.
All right. Obviously. Compared to me, you are. Fisherman jersey, yes or no? Fisherman jersey for third jersey, yes or no?
All right. Well, I'll give you some insight on the fisherman jersey. No. For me personally, one, but I'll say why.
Jersey?
I'll say why. It's a no for me, just from the standpoint is that as much as I wasn't around to watch what went on. They were laughing stock in the NHL when they wore that, right? And of course, this team's different, and I don't think changing the jersey impacts their results. Without the fisherman jersey, they would have been bad. I'm not a personal fan of teal at all. So
teal is
that
gone.
would be my reason. Teal is gone. So there's no teal. The fisherman jersey's face is gray. There's no real teal at all, like you said. There's no real wave. But it's going to be a much cleaner look. And again, they're going to wear it 7 to 8 times a year. But for me, I just wasn't a huge fan of the teal. There was a lot of teal in that, and I wasn't a fan of the way it looked. Just personal opinion, my favorite jersey was their second jerseys, the orange with the blue stripes down the side. Like I'm trying to think. I think it was those are my favorite jerseys. But yeah, if it was a yes or no with fishermen, I would say no. That's just my thing.
It's interesting because most young people
love it,
absolutely love it, and all it is a money-making venture for the team.
Well, yeah, they have to do it because it is going to sell out every game.
I mean, the jerseys that they had last year, Lou said, "Well, yeah, we got some of these extra dark blues back here. Let's make that our third jersey. Just slap the same logo on it. Nobody's going to notice a difference."
Honestly, at first, everyone said, "You know what? There's no change. It's just darker." It was a clean looking jersey. It wasn't flashy, no doubt, but it's a Lou Lamoriello run team. You're not going to get that. But they were, I liked them. They were solid. They weren't as bad as you initially thought. We were like, oh my God, all these teams are doing crazy stuff. They grew on me.
Can we say that Lou is getting stripped of some powers now that we're going? Maybe you can ease his departure after this season because now we're going to have that third jersey with the fisherman on it. Go out on a limb.
No comment.
Oh, that means a yes, Grumpy. We saw it right here because Lou Lamoriello doesn't have control over the jersey.
Beautiful.
Lou is being
that's it. He's in the out. Good job.
I think you look at it as making money. Every team coming out of the pandemic, by the way, has to make movie. You have to make the smart financial decision, and it's going to sell, and they're going to wear it 7 to 8 times. It would never become their actual home jersey, so there's nothing to worry about there.
That's why we.
I have one. I'm
going to buy another one. With the different colors, I'm going to buy another one. Why not?
It's going to be a clean looking jersey for sure.
It depends. If it's as expensive as I saw like Cologne being yesterday, Grumpy, if it's like charging me $250 or $300 for a jersey, maybe I'll forego.
If he has a gray face, that means like we're corpses. So I don't like that at all.
Okay.
It means the team is dead.
Gungun says, gents, how proud are you of Jeff McNeil?
He won the NL batting championship today.
Yep. Because he didn't play, right?
No, he did play.
Oh, they put him in?
I thought he was from the
bench. What does Rotzi remind you of? You know who he reminds me of? Patrice Bergeron.
Oh my God! Don't say that.
Now you're going to have high expectations.
Oh my gosh!
Wait. I'll tell you why. Just for first off, Patrice Bergeron, very good in the faceoff dot. This guy Rotzi could win faceoff. Hall of Famer, but smart player, positionally savvy, and you never catch him out of position doing the wrong thing. The guy seems to be always in the right place at the right time, making the strong plays, and he can do everything. I'm telling you, this kid Ratu, he's a net front presence on the power play. He's in the slot. He could play to the outside. He back checks hard. So as in style-wise, Patrice Bergeron is who I would compare it to. Again, not saying Ratu's going to be a Hall of Famer, just everything he does in the ring. He's a two-way forward that could be a top centerman or a second-line center, but play on the power play, win important defensive zone face-off. So that's why I compare him.
You don't have to sell him to me. I saw him play live. Yes, absolutely. I'm not saying Patrice Bergeron, but I'm going to say
it was the first name that came to mind.
That's cool. So. No, that's cool. I don't want the people here going crazy because here's the thing. I love Patrice Bergeron. Great player. Next comment. Drew Licata says, our 4th round pick, possibly a steal. Okay, I like that Isaiah George pick too. I just wish Lou would stop trading away 1st round picks so much. Okay, TJ hates when I do this, by the way, because I get through comments really fast. Let me ask you a question. we've already talked about Isaiah George. You like
Yeah.
him. I like the O'Dalius pick as well. We're
Yeah, very good
transitioning,
pick.
particularly on the back end, to modern NHL. I'm all
Yes.
for that. What about Finley? Did you see him at all?
Didn't see him at all. So it's hard to talk about him.
Okay.
Didn't
That's
see
fine.
much of him. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of other others on, but if you look at that draft, though, and Finley could be a strong player, but you look at that draft, and we're talking about Maggio, an older player, just by the league he was in, George, Maggio, like I said already, who I think, Odelius. It's a successful draft.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know. It looks successful right
So,
now.
yeah, I think that, again, yes, exactly. You're years away from seeing George because, what is it, to be in the AHL, you have to be 20. What is that?
Yeah, he's got 2 more years before he can, unless he makes the big team.
Yeah.
He got 2 more years in junior. My big saying is you're a prospect until you're not, which means you've either made it in the
I
NHL
100% agree with
or you're gone.
I couldn't agree with that more.
All right, DJ. Next comment.
Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. I'm sorry. Stefan, one question I did have for you is, do you know any information on the Goldashev situation, specifically if you can answer how Barry and Lou and handled the whole debacle with it?
Always thinking about it. He's got inside information.
No. I could tell you panic information, but I can't tell you Goalie information. I don't know what happened with that.
As well.
Okay, so with Panic, clearly he wasn't happy with playing in Bridgeport last year. I mean, that's obvious. He was loaned out to the Chicago Wolves, I believe, and this year he wasn't invited to training camp, and we were told he's being reassigned. So I think clearly he thought when he was joining the Islanders he would have a chance to at least play at the NHL level. It didn't happen. I'm not saying promises were made that weren't kept. Did he deserve to play last year? I don't know, but he didn't want to play in Bridgeport. They reassigned him, and they weren't going to deal with that headache again this year, and he's off the team.
I guess you look at Richard Panic, how he did play a couple of games up here.
Yeah.
He was just as good as Matt Martin or Cal Clutterbuck or Josh Bailey. And I could understand. And see, that's my concern going into this year. We have the veterans, the guys who've been here forever. If they don't perform well, Barry we're just going to roll them out every night. I hope Lane isn't like that, because I'm a big believer in best guys play. Regardless, I don't care.
I agree. I think if certain veteran players struggle and guys in the minors, let's say Ratu tears it up to start and he's very hot, and there are players at the NHL level not even close. Again, it's tough because Ratu's a center, and we asked him about could he play the wing, and Lane said he's a center. So a centerman would have to go down, or they'd have to move someone to the wing to force that. I don't know if they would want to do that. A guy like Holmstrom, if he starts tearing up, different story because he can play the wing. But yeah, you want to see their players be rewarded. You know, you're in a point where you need to win games, like I said before, especially early. Like there's no room for error really in the Metro. So I think that if there are players tearing it up or players in the NHL level aren't getting it done, and you have that youth, you didn't bring in anyone else. You got to take advantage of that, because if they're ready now and they're going to play to a level and they deserve a shot, they got to get a shot.
I'm looking more at guys like whoever doesn't start out of Shushnikov, Bellows, Wallstrom, those guys, are they going to be given that shot right away? I just think we've given way too much rope to veterans previously. I don't know what Lambert's thoughts on that are. Have you gotten any impression one way or another?
He has been very quiet as to his game plan. When you ask him about certain players, he says one thing about the player, but then brings it back to the whole group. But he also said players will answer all the questions for us. He said that numerous times through training camp. And you would think that that's the mindset he's going to go with, is that if players aren't playing well and people are questioning, well, who deserves to be in the lineup? It kind of sounds like there'll be accountability there and players will get chances. Like, again, I think the young players still will have shorter leashes. Not saying the older players will have long leashes, but I think that if you're going to pull younger players for making mistakes quickly, and if you see a veteran not doing the same, Bellows goes in there. Like if there's a player not playing well, Bellows gets the chance, or Shoshnikov gets the chance. And then it's up to them to, like, they come in and they don't play. If they play as well as that veteran did, they're going to come out. But if they outperform that, then it's very hard for anyone to justify taking them out of the lineup when things are rolling.
See, I'm a big believer. if you play just as well as the veteran sits because there's upside with the younger guy as opposed to a veteran where there's no upside.
And we talked about speed. You know, not Bellis isn't the fastest, Wallstrom isn't the fastest, but they're younger, which means that they could handle it a lot better. So we'll see what happens on that.
Yep. Becker Supply Company said, I 100% agree on Parise, talking with Stefan's point. Unfortunately, we have no one on this team that can fill the role there with Barzal. If we had somebody playing with Barzal and Parise in the bottom six and it's working, you know, the team would be way better off.
I think let Palmieri, and that first off, we spoke to all three of them, and that they, I think it was Palmieri said, like, we want this line to stick. Like, we want this to be a good group. And we spoke with Parise, and we know how Parise and Barzal work together. And talking with Parise yesterday, because I'm going to do a piece at NY Hockey Now on Palmieri and how that there's trust that last year's Palmieri, like, he'll be what he was in the second half. And again, of course, no teammate's going to throw him under the bus. But if Palmieri could be a goal scorer like he was in the second half, and Barzal, again, no contract decisions looming, clear head, focused, confident guy, more offensive chances because Lane wants him to be more offensive. Obviously, the system, we'll see what happens. I wouldn't rule out that line being a good line. And again, if that's your second line, other teams are going to have to focus, okay, are we putting our top defense against Barzal's line, or are we putting our top defense against Nelson's line? Because Nelson's line, again, you look at the players on the line, is that a first line in the NHL? On the surface, no.
No.
If they're taking the first defensive group against them, that gives more power to Barzal.
They won't do that.
Vice versa. If Barzal takes the first defenseman group against him, which is likely what happens, that allows for the Nelson Lee Bavilli line to be one of the better second lines in the league. So it comes down to how defensive plans to go against the Islanders.
Barzal is the first line. You don't pay a guy $9 million and put him on
they're gonna the first and second line are gonna play probably pretty close to the same amount of time, in my opinion. I think that's what's gonna happen.
But who's gonna the Barzal line is gonna get the top defensive assignment, period.
Which is fine. Well, if that works and you see really can those guys compete as a number one line, and at the very least, if they can't, they're still gonna get it because Barzal's there. You give more power to the Nelson line because Nelson he could be a number one center in this league by far. I think he could be. But again, it depends on his line mates, not by himself.
Nelson, you're going to see Nelson take a step back this year. He's not going to shoot 22% again.
Oh, well, also too, he missed a lot of games, which skews his shooting percentage because he didn't play as many games. So less shots, more goals. Obviously, that number is going to be higher. So yeah, I agree. But at the same time, I mean,
he's career 14%. Well, every year except for last year.
No, yeah, I agree. I don't think he's going to keep it up, but at the same time, he's still going to get the second best defensive pairing, which is much better for him than getting the first.
Yep.
Frank says here, Grumpy and Steven, he says, Stefan is great.
Not Stefan, it's Stefan.
Sorry, I'm telling you, I want to mess up names. I cannot read. You understand? I'm sorry, Grumpy.
We've only been on here
Stefan is great.
Minutes.
I told you I'd call him a million things. Sorry. Stefan is great.
Steph. All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Steph, there it is. That Steph is easy for me. I'll probably make a mistake there too.
That's fine.
Rich A says DeFore needs that first explosion step. I agree with you though. He's got decent top end speed.
He nailed it. Rich nailed it because it's explosive. Because right now he doesn't have that initial step, but after those 3 or 4 strides, he's flying. But the problem is it takes him a little too slowly to get from his initial step to his max speed, and that's what he has to work on.
Particularly in the offensive zone, you got to be able to move.
Yeah. Cutting to the outside. He's able to dominate with that.
Defensemen have changed. You don't see defensemen who are 6'4", 230 pounds anymore. They're all smaller guys who can move, and that's what hurts him in the offensive zone.
And Becker Supply Company says, what do you guys think of Ledoux having a shot at the roster? Lane thought highly of him, and I know that we've all talked about it. We think very highly of him. I think he's probably going to be the number 7 guy over.
I think it's going to be Hutton. Hutton is going to be the number 7 guy.
So I like Hutton, but like I said, Ledoux's a dark horse. I actually asked Lane that question today.
Oh, really?
What do you think of Ledoux? And that's that was the answer he gave. He thought very high of him. He thought he played well last night. He's a dark horse for sure for the spot. I wouldn't be shocked with anything. The only thing I wouldn't be shocked with Aho getting the spot. Not that I'm saying he's the top choice. I think if you need a 7th defenseman, it should be someone that you rely upon defensively to go in, because you're not bringing someone on to score. You need a guy that's reliable defensively. Hutton and Ledoux would be my 2 choices there. The thing with Hutton is that he's a right-handed D. That's your one concern, and playing him on his offside. But Ledoux could definitely win that job for sure. He looks great, and he's scoring goals too.
I'm just going to say one thing about that. Defensively, if your biggest concern is who's your number 7 defenseman, you're in good shape defensively.
Yeah,
It's
and they should, and that should be defense should not be a concern.
Right.
Gungun says, Rockin' Rosner. What went
Rosner.
wrong with Josh Hosang? He seemed to be like the real deal, but the Islanders ultimately treat him like a discarded banana peel.
Unfortunately for Hosang, he came up, watched TV, and then Barzal came off, and Hosang went into the shadow. Barzal was Hosang on steroids. Essentially what happened, and Hosang also too, I was talking with someone that watched him overseas, and they said if you're ever looking on the ring and you see one guy taking on 5 people, it's Hosang. So I think Hosang is, first off, he seemed to be a very cocky player, but he also didn't understand how to work as a team. He wanted to be that guy doing everything, and that's not how you win. He played 1 game in the KHL this year, got hurt, and he had an assist and he had a couple of mistakes. And in the press conference, they asked him about his mistakes, and he said, "Why are you talking about mistakes? How about you ask me about my goal or my assist, or whatever?" So the guy mentally doesn't have the fortitude, I guess, to be an NHL player. And we saw from the first hand, sleeping in the first day of training camp, coming to the Coliseum and running the steps and being sent back. You got to have a maturity level to play in the NHL. And I think his maturity level, whether it be because of Barzal overtaking him or just because he thought he was the real deal and he wasn't, because we watched him, ultra talented. He's not a team player. And I think that's what went wrong. And I don't think any coach could help that. They tried. He just didn't evolve mature-wise, and that ultimately cost him. And now he's in the KHL not getting minutes. So that's all you got to, again, that's a skill league too. So the fact that a skilled player is not getting playing time, that says something.
We have a saying around here, if things go wrong for a player and the team seems to punish them, they've been Hosanged. To me, if you saw this from Josh Hosang all those years, you should have traded him, moved him while he still had value, as opposed to keeping him on your roster until he would totally out of options.
I think, and it could have been false hope. I think they thought that eventually they could help figure it out, and it just didn't work out. And again, it's unfortunate because he has the talent level is unreal. He has the talent to play in the NHL, just not the right mind. And I think they didn't want to give up on him, but it got to a point where he kind of forced their hand. And I don't blame him for wanting to move out, but yeah.
They ran out of options. But he had great chemistry. I'll never forget. Him and Nelson had really – because Nelson is not a creator. He just isn't.
He's a finisher.
He needs a creator, and they were extraordinary together.
Yeah, and then but you just got you got to keep that mentality up with whoever you play with, and I think Hosang thought of himself much higher than the organization did in terms of just like where he fit at that moment. Like I said, Hosang came up, must watch TV. Then Barzal came, and everybody's like, "Oh, Barzal's just a better Hosang." So that's I feel like what happened to him.
Got a comment here from Brian J saying, do you guys think the team will stick to playing young guys despite the results, meaning let them develop and not resort back to playing the older options? I don't see the point of playing the older guys at the sacrifice of the future.
At this stage,
we said that.
We just talked
about
that.
Yeah, you can rewatch the show and at that.
We just talked about that.
John Smith there said, echo,
whatever.
Yeah,
whatever.
I know.
Echo chamber.
D-Cut saying, TJ sitting back the English language for a few hundred years. Yes, I am. And Freedom
We
Fund
don't pull punches on the show, by the way, Stefan. We do not pull punches. The guests don't pull punches. The people who comment do not pull punches. Hey, we're just one big happy family here.
Hey, time flies when you're having fun. I can't believe you've been on here for 3.5 hours.
I'm sorry. We're right here at the end. And again,
no, you're completely fine. I'll be up till 2:00 writing anyway, so it's all good.
Freedom Fund Adventure says, I've got a lot of confidence in the organization. I'm about 2 years, and in about 2 years, and maybe this year, but the interim has me worrisome. Do you agree?
I don't even know what he just said.
What he's trying to say is he has confidence in the team about 2 years from now.
When players start to fall off the cap, when we have the ability to start loading up with new players. But right now he's a little worried. He feels confident about the organization, but right now he's a little worried.
That's fair. Again, this is so many question marks. That so many things have to go right for the Islanders to have success this year. Now, I think a lot of those things could go right, but I agree. I think in a couple of years with the prospect, again, also you're banking on prospects. That's not an ideal thing to do. You kind of want prospects to come in smoothly. You don't want to force the hand and be like, okay, we need the prospects now. So there should be, positive looking into the future, given that we just talked about this year's draft and certain players. And there's major question marks in the interim, but I wouldn't bank on these prospects all panning out because it never works.
They don't. But I don't feel we can trade away first-round picks anymore. I mean, I don't even care if we're close to a playoff spot. It's like, no. You have to resist the urge because we have to make the transition. The transition is upon us, actually.
The transition is already happening.
Yes. Look at the age of the forward group.
Yeah.
He also said, TJ, I received your message. Yes, I've got a great insurance agent who can help out take a life insurance policy out on Grumpy. She'll reach out to you tomorrow. I know that honoring Bailey's 1000th game must be a sad moment. Grumpy, is that what's going to happen? He's predicting you're gonna pass at that point. Is that gonna be the passing point for you, Grumpy? If when Bailey plays 1,000 games?
I hope not, because then I won't make it even to my next birthday.
Wait till he gets it. Wait till he gets put into the Islanders Hall of Fame. If it's going to happen.
Oh
my God. That's
don't even talk that shit. Here's the thing. You want to put failure in the Hall of Fame? Put Josh Bailey.
No, but
Josh Bailey in the Hall of Fame.
Regardless of everything that you think of Bailey, and I'm not saying everything is wrong.
Here's the thing. All he does is skate on the ice every night. That's all he does. You know what? It's like giving a participation trophy to Josh Bailey because he's been here so long. No freaking way. You have to accomplish something. He's accomplished nothing. Nothing.
I didn't mean to cause this type of reaction.
What does he want? He's never even scored 20 goals. He's never even scored. He's a freaking plays on the freaking power play. He's been on the first line. He's never scored 20 goals in a year. Never. You don't retire a guy's number. You don't put him on the wall for failure. No.
Hey, Freedom Fund. No. Can that insurance agent go ahead and take that call tonight? I think I need to get in touch with him sooner rather than later. Rob G says, you got to have faith. I bet the Islanders rock it out this year. TJ and Grumpy, they can do it. Give their system a chance before you kill it.
And if not, he's going to leash that dog on you.
I don't want that Rottweiler coming at me. So, yes, or whatever the heck type of dog that is. But, Rob, got to have faith. I agree. I'm feeling a little optimistic. Maybe it's because the season's right on the corner, but I am. Jeremy F. said, are you suggesting the Leafs need Lee as a goalie, just an average goaltender?
Yes, that's right.
He also said, I would be all for Pelech and Dobson, Romanoff and Pulak, and Salo and Mayfield, as we mentioned. I think that would be great. I think that would be a great pairing, great matchups. And if things struggle out of the gate,
your two best defensemen together. Put your two best defensemen together. 25 minutes a night.
A lot of teams like that. Yeah. And then, he's saying, Rob G also said, I highlight for the last part. Grumpy, stay positive. Grumpy, stay positive.
I am positive.
If you were positive, your name wouldn't be the Grumpy Old Man. That's a hard change to make at this point. So I think you should just stick with it.
I'm not changing it.
Oh, man. CJ says Timo Meyer is who I want us to trade for. Maybe Pujarvi or Tarasenko. Now
he botched Pujarvi's spelling, but I wrote an article actually about this, about the Islanders going and getting him, because he's a guy that reminds me a lot of Bellows. They've been banking on this kid in Edmonton. He's been given chances with McDavid, with Draisaitl. It hasn't worked. He's been more of a defensive player, and this is a guy that's a legitimate goal scorer. And you're looking at Bellows, where he's getting his minutes because he's hitting and playing that physical style that I thought maybe a change of scenery for Puljujärvi would be what they needed. It wouldn't cost much because they signed him obviously because of arbitration. They had to RFA, but I still wouldn't be shocked if he's dealt before or anything, that he's not on this. He's definitely not on the Edmonton long term. And I think maybe give him a shot. He's not going to cost that much, I don't think, because the Edmonton Oilers need cap space anyway, so they would probably just dump him essentially. I thought maybe on the Islanders give him a look with a guy like Barzal, because Puljujärvi
don't get rid of that comment. Oh, dude,
I'll pull back. Don't worry, Grumpy.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Continue.
One thing, Stefan, I'm just going to go on a limb here. If you can't succeed playing on line with Draisaitl and McDavid, you ain't going to make it. Now, here's my question for you. Put it back up, TJ.
Hold on, that was a different one. I'm sorry. I'm getting it.
It doesn't matter. I just want the picture.
Oh shit. Okay, gotcha. You're looking for this one.
Yes. That you see that character? That little, what is that? What do you think that is?
I mean, it looks like a Power Ranger to me.
Thank you very much. It's not. It's, what is it, TJ? Red Lupin?
Lupin Ranger Red. I don't know.
Lupin Ranger Red. We've been down this road before. We don't know.
Okay.
Jeremy Ford here saying, Chara's best work was off the ice and how to be a high-level athlete in the NHL.
Correct. That's why he played in the NHL longer than, I was alive, essentially, almost.
I tell you, unbelievable. Even Richie Pilon, we had him on the show, spoke very highly of Zdeno.
Oh,
Chara.
wow. That's awesome.
Matthew says, What about the fourth line? Will somebody get traded to make room for somebody like Ross Johnson or Shushnikov?
The time to trade anyone would have been Clutterbuck last year at the deadline, and he was banged up and he was staying long term. We kind of thought that he would get moved because he was having maintenance days leading up to the draft. I had heard of things out of Colorado that Colorado was very interested in bringing him on. Again, Clutterbuck's one of those guys that every playoff team needs a guy like them to win a cup. Not saying it's Clutterbuck specifically, but every team needs a grinder like that. Like you could have taken Cizikas, same type of thing. Every team needs that. So I thought Colorado might have gone after him, and they possibly could have. I just know that they were very interested and they were trying to get him, but obviously he re-signed. There's no value at this point. Clutterbuck's on a new deal. Cizikas' money and Martin's money makes them pretty much immovable. If Soshnikov's going to play, I think it would be on the third or fourth line, which could be, again, to give Martin some breaks there every now and again. Ross Johnson, again, if Soshnikov makes the team, you're probably putting Johnson on waivers because you're not putting Kiefer Bellows or Wallstrom in the minors anyway. So, or Bailey for that matter. So I think if Soshnikov stays, Johnson goes down, which means Soshnikov would probably be that guy, or Bellows to play on the fourth line.
See, I mean, that's another example of mismanagement as far as I'm concerned.
Because I've really liked the way he's played. I wish there was a spot available for him, Shoshnikov.
Yeah,
I'm talking about Clutterbuck. I'm talking about bringing Clutterbuck back. He's a fourth line guy at 34 years old. They're a dime a freaking dozen. Dime a dozen.
And I'd love to see what a guy like Shoshnikov could get. And I've liked what I've seen. Again, it's a preseason game, but I've liked what I've seen out of him in the limited capacity.
It doesn't matter. You probably could have got a third-round pick for Clutterbuck at the deadline.
He broke his hand. That was the only thing I heard.
But you could have traded him earlier. If Colorado was legitimately showing interest, you weren't going anywhere. You moved fourth liners. I mean, it's nonsensical. It drives me crazy.
We've got two comments.
Yeah, I think the big thing, before you do this one, I think the big thing with Clutterbuck's deal, I get the mismanagement and I understand what you're saying. They lined him up with his deal expires when Cizikas' does. And I don't think Martin's does yet. Hold on. So, no, Cizikas has more years, but I think
he's got 5 years left.
So Clutterbuck and Martin expire at the same time, and I think that was by design. They gave Clutterbuck 2 years. That way, him and Martin would be off at the same time, and that's probably the end of it. That's the only reason I can tell you why I think he got what he got, just to line him up with Martin when they decide, okay, let's say the fourth line doesn't work this year. They're gone at the same time because Cizikas is the younger of all of them, is the guy that could play longer given what he's done. So I think that's the reason. Not saying it's correct, but that's why they did it, in my opinion.
Nonsensical. It just makes no sense.
CJ says, hooked on phonics. Get it for TJ. Grumpy. Drew L says, yeah, TJ has his millennial hissy fits. Grumpy has his Bailey hissy fits. And John Smith says, say bye-bye to Johnson, then he'll get claimed in a heartbeat.
He's not getting claimed. I'm sorry. As good as people think Johnson may be, and he could help a lot of teams for sure. His salary cap hit and the cap error, you can't take that on unless you're playing him every night, and I don't think teams would do that. Even then, it's probably not worth it financially for teams.
I do want to make sure, we're here towards the end. And again, I want to thank Steph there for number one, being on here as long as he has and sharing.
Running the risk of losing his press credentials just by being on the show.
No. Yeah.
I told we should have fuzzed his name and digitally altered his voice, auto-tuned
Deep Throat. We've got Deep Throat with us here on the podcast. We could edit that in post.
Yeah, for certain we could.
Oh, man.
I could change whatever he said in a different voice, and it'll fit all my narratives. It'll be perfect.
Oh, good gracious. But, I'll make sure we're showing up Steph's information there. And again, you could find him. He writes for NYI Hockey Now. He writes there, provides great content, good insights. Just like we had said, multiple ways of thinking at a different perspective as a guy who's inside the room, who is not afraid to ask tough questions, ask questions that the listeners of the show ask on a consistent basis and provide those answers and ask those tough questions there to leadership, to the organization, to general manager, to head coach, to players on the team. So you could find another one where he writes at NYI Hockey Now. And you can also find him where he's got his podcast, the Back Check Podcast. Again, those are all in the link in the description below where you can find Steph's information. But Steph, what do you want to say here before we wrap things up?
Well, definitely appreciate you guys having me on it. It is an honor to be on podcast. Obviously, as someone who's starting out in person in the media, like every chance I get to talk and be part of these things, it's a great experience for me. But also, I mean, like I said earlier when we started, I I don't pretend to know more than anyone else. Like, I'm not going to come on here and say I know more than you, because quite frankly, I don't. I could just put words on paper in a way that people enjoy or understand. And I'm also in the room, which gives me the benefit of sharing stuff that not other people knows about. So again, I love what I do. This was a dream of me to do this in college, and I'm happy. I mean, I pinch myself every day that I have the opportunity. So when you guys want me on and people want me on, it means the world. That's why I don't mind being on here for 3 hours and 44 minutes, because as much as I enjoy talking, and this is an honor for me to do this. I appreciate it.
I was about to say, what you do a great job of, and Grump and I have always talked about it, is you're dubious, right? A lot of writers maybe aren't, where it's like, hey, I know what I want to write about. How can I piecemeal things together to get to my end result? It's not necessarily that. That's not the style you write with, where it's more of, I posed a question, I provide, different ways of thinking about this, right? I may discern what your opinion is, and in some cases you leave it up to the reader as well to discern that without trying to lead them too much. And I think you do a great job of that. And again, it's why we love having you on there. And you always have a spot here anytime you ever want to come on and speak about anything Islanders related. Always. So always thank you again for coming on. And Grumpy, I know you like to say something all the time, Grumpy. I want to thank you for your time this evening too, Grumpy.
Yeah, sure.
There's something you like to say all the time too.
That's true. You don't want to become a boot-licking weasel, Stefan.
He's not, man. I love him. What can I say?
The longer he stays, they might try to turn it. They might give him a couple of boots for Christmas. Say, practice licking these. Know where your bread is.
I'm Jewish, so
okay. Well, hey, for Hanukkah, you're going to get 9 pairs of boots. Lick them up. Make sure those things are spit shined, so this way we can go after them. That's right. 8 crazy nights. That's right. My bad. And I should know that. Honestly, I should know that, being from New York. I should absolutely know that. I've been gone too long. But what I always like to say is love and laughter to everyone who listens, and even those who don't, from TJ, the grumpy old man, and Stefan.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening this evening to the show. Again, thank you for your time, both Steph and Grumpy Old Man. We'll be live again this Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, have a great rest of your work week. I hope your hump day was well. Have a great Thursday and Friday. We'll see you guys on Saturday. Thank you so much, both you guys, again. And thank you, everybody, for listening.